Chapter 982. The advantage of monthly votes and recommendation votes the bald crane had obtained through snot and tears was gone in one night. It was probably going to drive it mad. Its ears were about to go mad as well. Recommendation votes. Monthly votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come com to cast recommendation votes and monthly votes. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 983. That old man is Lai Shan family's guest, Guru Song Qing. He actually appeared in this sort of small auction. That's right, that old monster is personally guarding this strange item. Old monster Song Qing has been Lai Shan family's guest for many years, and his power is unfathomable. His sealing arts are also incredibly shocking. I heard that someone from Tai Ci family was willing to pay a huge price to invite old monster Song Qing to leave Lai Shan family and become their guest, but he was politely rejected. As the discussions caused by the old man's appearance rose in the auction hall, the old man with the big build lifted his head and cast a cold glance at the entire place. He lifted his right hand and pointed at the broken statue floating in front of him. Since most of you know me and can be considered as my friends, then allow me to give all of you a word of advice. If you don't recognize this item, then do not place a bid so easily. Old Song Qing only said this one sentence before he fell silent. He stood there like a small hill. However, if he had not said those words, then perhaps the appearance of the statue would not have attracted too much attention. However, once he said those words, all the people in the auction hall immediately focused their gazes on the statue. Just what is this item? Could it be the statue of an ancient god? That's not right. I can't sense that ancient presence from the statue, but the ancient presence coming from it is a little unfathomable. How dare you ask for a starting bid of 800,000 crystals for this statue? It's not worth it at all. The sounds of discussions immediately spread through the auction hall like a buzz. In fact, there were even some voices of doubt that rose in the air, causing the thousands of people in the auction hall to fall into a state of slight chaos. I cannot say whether this item is worth it or not. My fellow Taoists, if there are any among you who recognize this item, then even if you have several tens of millions of crystals, you will still choose to buy it. If you don't, then you will not bring out even a single crystal. That is why you can place your bids now. The auctioneer from Lai Shan family had a relaxed expression on his face. When he spoke with a smile, the auction hall gradually fell silent, but no one placed a bid. Su Ming stood beside the illusory wall in the room and stared at the statue with a dumbfounded expression. He did not know whether the other people recognized this item, but he could tell what it was with just one glance. The ancient presence on it belonged to the berserkers. This statue was clearly a statue of the god of berserkers. Lai Shan family always has some strange things. What is this? Yu Chenhai frowned as he looked at the statue by the side. Even Yu Ro was staring at it attentively at that moment, but she still could not recognize it. This item is not bad. Although this old man can't recognize it, it's good to have a look at it at home. 1,000,000 crystal stones. After a moment of silence, a hoarse voice came from the auction hall. That voice did not echo in the hall filled with thousands of people. Instead, it came from the rooms around Su Ming. Once it appeared, it immediately caught the attention of the cultivators in the hall. Another voice rang in the hall. Su Ming said, "Another voice. One. Another of another. Of Shan. 1,600,000 spar." Su Ming. Very soon, another voice joined the bidding. As three people appeared to compete for the item, no matter what it was, it immediately caused the cultivators in the auction hall to become excited. All three voices came from the VIP rooms above. All those who had a room in the auction hall belonged to the families in Black Ink Planet, unlike the ones in the hall, who were mostly rogue cultivators from Black Ink Planet or outsiders. There was a secret chamber in Lai Shan family's auction hall as they bid against each other. At that moment, there was an old man sitting cross-legged in that chamber, and behind him were around 10 men who were clearly members of Lai Shan family, based on their figures. They stood respectfully in front of him. One of them was naturally Lai Shan Kongjiao. They did not speak, and were all looking at the illusory screen of light before the old man. The entire auction hall was displayed there, and even their voices could be heard. The old man had a head full of white hair. He wore a long, dark blue robe, and his face was covered in wrinkles. He sat there quietly and looked at the screen of light before him. A decaying presence spread out from his body, as if he had already become incredibly old. The air around him distorted faintly, and as it distorted, it continuously shattered and reassembled itself. In fact, if anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see that the area around the old man was distorting and shattering. It was because of wind. There was an invisible layer of wind around the old man, and it was continuously swirling around him. Elder Fong, I've added the statue of the god of berserkers to the auction hall as per your orders. The air behind the old man swayed, as if it had been torn apart, and a man walked out from within. That man looked to be in his 50s, and there was a thick, murderous aura around his entire body. He took a huge step forward and bowed respectfully to the old man before speaking in a low voice. The old man nodded. His eyes were still fixed on the auction hall, as if he was waiting for something. After a long while, the bid for the statue in the auction hall had already reached 4 million something crystals, but the person the old man was waiting for still did not say anything about wanting to buy it. Kong Jio. The old man's voice was ancient, and there was a unique hoarseness to it. In fact, there was even an accent that was different from those in Black Ink Planet. Elder Fong. Lishan Kong Jio immediately stepped forward and bowed deeply towards the old man. His expression was incredibly respectful. This old man's status was second only to the progenitor in the family, and the countless years he had contributed to the family had caused his status to be incredibly high. There were also some legends about this old man in the family, which made the family members hold him in great respect. Tell me in detail what you felt at that time, the old man mumbled softly. Yes. Lishan Kong Jiu sucked in a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. Before him, I felt as if I was facing the progenitor. The blood veins in my body seemed to have gone out of control, and even my berserker mark was about to show itself. More importantly, when I faced him, I had the urge to worship him. This thought came from my soul, as if... Lishan Kong Jio's words came to a halt. As if what? The old man turned his head around and looked at Lishan Kong Jio. When the old man looked at him, wind immediately appeared out of nowhere around Lishan Kong Jio. It was as if... I don't know how to describe it. I just felt that when I was before him, I didn't want to put up any form of resistance. I would believe in his words without any hesitation. Lishan Kong Jiu lowered his head with a wry smile. The dozen-something members of the Lishan family behind him immediately had solemn expressions on their faces. The old man fell silent. He turned his head around and continued watching everything in the auction hall while mumbling quietly in his heart. Is he someone from our homeland? Then he will definitely recognize the statue of the god of berserkers. If he is, then that's good. But if he isn't and has practiced some sort of cultivation method that can suppress us berserkers, then forget about the fact that you're just a guest of the Yu family. Even if you're one of the progenitors of the Yu family who has recently been freed, even if you're the apostle of the sun god and moon god, even if you're a member of the 3 great families and have the old men from the 3 great families protecting you, you will definitely die in Black Ink Planet. There is nothing in Black Ink Planet that we Lishan family cannot do. The old man narrowed his eyes, and a hint of killing intent shone in them. If anyone else knew what he was thinking, they would definitely be incredibly shocked, because he clearly knew everything that had happened in the Yu family. But this matter was the greatest secret in the Yu family. Most of the family members did not know about it, but the old man clearly knew about it in great detail. In fact, based on the words in his heart, he seemed to be looking down on the 3 great families. Then was the Lishan family, a middle-sized family in the eyes of the cultivators in Black Ink Planet, truly just a middle-sized family? While the old man was thinking about this, the auction hall and the illusory screen of light suddenly fell silent. My young master wants this statue. A very beautiful voice reverberated in the auction hall, and a woman walked out from one of the rooms that belonged to the various families in the auction hall. That woman had a veil over her face, But even so, she still possessed an unparalleled beauty that could make people's hearts pound. As she walked out, the area instantly fell silent, but numerous gazes instantly gathered on her body. 6 million crystals. Pack this up properly and give it to me. That unparalleled beauty was Uro. Her expression was elegant, and when she stood on the platform, a storage bag appeared in her hand. She pushed it forward lightly, and the storage bag immediately floated towards the auctioneer from Lishan family. The auctioneer was stunned. Once he caught the storage bag, he instinctively cast a glance at the guest of his family, Guru Songqing, and saw that Songqing's expression was incredibly solemn as he stared at the woman. This is... The Lishan family member hesitated for a moment. At that moment, a lackadaisical voice suddenly came from the rooms belonging to the other families. There was even a teasing tone to that voice. "My lady, I'll offer 7 million crystals." 8 million crystals, Uro said flatly without raising her head. "Haha, all right, I'll offer 9 million crystals." Laughter came from the lackadaisical voice, but there was a hint of lust in that laughter as it echoed in the air for a long time. Once the price appeared, the cultivators in the auction hall put on expressions as if they wanted to watch a good show. Occasionally, some people would lift their heads to look at the room where the man's voice came from, but all of them would immediately lower their heads. "There aren't many people who would dare to compete against me. Tai Ci Yong in Blackwater City. You're pretty good, girl. I'll offer 10 million crystals, but I'll give you a chance as well. If you offer 15 million crystals, then I won't compete against you." The lackadaisical voice chuckled softly. 20 million crystals. What answered him was Uro. She did not lift her head, as if she was ignoring him. There was a hint of coldness in her gentle voice. Once that price was placed, the entire auction hall immediately burst into a commotion. "All right, I'll give the statue to your master. The price is 20 million crystals, and you, girl, bring me the crystal stone and this little girl. This young master wants to enjoy himself here." As the laughter echoed in the air, a piercing howl immediately came from one of the rooms above. Two figures shot out in a flash and charged towards Uro. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 984. Su Ming stood beside the illusory screen of light in his room. With just one step, he would be able to step out of the room and enter the auction hall. This was where Uro had gone out previously. He looked at the wind and clouds moving outside, at Uro placing her bid, at the languid voice teasing her, and even at the two figures that flew out of her room. All of this was because of a single, flat sentence he had uttered just then. "I'll be taking that statue." At that moment, even though chaos had broken out in the auction hall, Su Ming continued standing there and watching everything outside. The two figures charged out from the auction hall, and a vast amount of power erupted from their bodies with a bang. They were in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, and like two rampaging dragons, they tore through space and closed in on Uro in an instant. Judging by their presence, it was as if capturing Uro alive would be incredibly easy for them. After all, to them, Uro was only in the initial stage of World Plane Realm. By Su Ming's side, Yu Chunhai's expression changed. He wanted to go out and help her, but when he saw that Su Ming's expression did not change, he hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and rushing out of the screen of light to charge towards Uro. Due to his status in the Yu family and his love of making friends, there were quite a number of people who were familiar with Yu Chunhai and Blacking Planet. When he appeared, some people in the crowd immediately recognized him. "It's Yu Chunhai, so it's a member of the Yu family. This is going to be interesting. That pretty girl should be Yu Chunhai's maidservant, but aren't they being a little too blind to actually provoke someone from the Tai Ci family?" Compared to Tai Ci family, one of the three greatest families in Blacking Planet, a middle-tier family is like comparing fireflies to a bright sun. Yu Chunhai should not have appeared. As expected, lust blinds one's intellect. This saying is true. Boom! A loud bang immediately reverberated through Lai Shan family's auction hall, turning into countless echoes that shook the place. It was deafening to the ears. As the people in the area swiftly spread out, they immediately saw to their shock that the two cultivators who had rushed towards Uro had coughed up blood at the same time for some unknown reason. Their bodies tumbled backwards and crashed into the wall by the side. By the looks of it, they were bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. They looked incredibly pathetic, and their expressions were filled with terror and disbelief. In fact, even Yu Chenhai, who was about to help in midair, widened his eyes at that moment. Disbelief appeared on his face. He saw Uro standing elegantly on the platform, and she slowly put down the hand she had raised. She had only lifted her hand and swung it, and she had already caused the two cultivators in the middle stage of World Plane Realm to cough up blood and fall back. They were heavily injured. A ripple of power belonging to those in the later stage of World Plane Realm spread out faintly from Uro's body, turning into a powerful, mighty pressure. Under that pressure, even the breathing of the people in the area froze, and it was especially so for the two cultivators from the Tai Ci family. Their bodies were pinned to the wall under that mighty pressure, and they could not break free. The area instantly fell silent. This scene surpassed the people's expectations. Uro lifted her head, and her calm gaze fell on the illusory screen of light in the room where Su Ming was. Su Ming saw Uro's gaze in the screen of light. "Kill them," he said flatly. His voice traveled out of the screen of light and echoed in the auction hall. It was only at that moment that the thousands of cultivators in the auction hall truly realized that Yu Chenhai was not the real owner, neither was he the woman's master. The true young master the woman spoke of was the person who had spoken at that moment. At the instant Su Ming's voice traveled out, Uro hesitated for a moment, but she immediately forced down her hesitation and lifted her right hand to point at the two cultivators. At that moment, a low roar came from the room belonging to the Tai Ci family. "How dare you kill the guards of Tai Ci family in Blackwater City?" Along with the voice came an old man who looked like a fierce tiger. He took a step out of the room belonging to the Tai Ci family, and the moment he appeared, he immediately lifted his right foot and stomped on the air. With a bang, the two cultivators who had been frozen to the wall immediately shuddered. Once they regained their freedom, they charged towards the old man with pale faces. Tai Ci family's guest, Yun Longhu. It's him, Yun Longhu in the later stage of World Plane Realm. Some of the cultivators in the area immediately recognized the old man, but all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Right at the instant, the two cultivators from the Tai Ci family who had been freed from being frozen took a step forward. A dark light in the shape of a crescent moon appeared out of nowhere beside them. They could only vaguely see a figure that seemed to be caught between a corporeal and an illusion. At the instant it swept past the two people, two shrill screams of pain immediately reverberated in the area. As they screamed, the two people's heads were separated from their bodies. Their souls and nascent divinities also shattered at that instant, and their forms and souls were destroyed. The expression of the old man from the Tai Ci family changed. As his pupils shrank, an indistinct figure appeared in midair outside the room where Su Ming was. That person was bald and had a black cloak covering his body. The ferocious totem on his scalp shone faintly, and that person was the Duke of Crimson Flame. This was the first time the Duke of Crimson Flame brought out his full power before Su Ming. He did not want to use this power too often. In fact, when Su Ming was in danger in the past, he would only shift and not attack. However, once Su Ming obtained his Akang clone, the Duke of Crimson Flame, who had truly acknowledged him, changed his way of thinking. "My master said that they must die, so they must die," the Duke of Crimson Flame said in a cruel voice. His voice was hoarse, and there was a murderous, bloodthirsty aura to it, showing off his domineering attitude as a powerful warrior of his generation in the past. The guest of the Tai Ci family, the old man called Yun Long, who let out a cold harumph with a dark expression on his face. This was Blackwater City, and this place was under the control of the Tai Ci family. No matter how many powerful warriors there were in this place, he would not be afraid. In fact, the lackadaisical voice from the room behind him was still speaking in a lackadaisical manner. "How lively! When did the members of the Yu family become so bold? As the voice spoke, people walked out of the room. The person in the lead was a young man dressed in luxurious robes. He held a fan in his hand, and once he walked out swaggeringly, a chilling glare shone in his eyes. But when he saw Yu, it turned into a lascivious one. There were 3 old men behind him. Their expressions were apathetic, and their eyes were closed, as if they were puppets. When the young man spoke, his gaze moved away from Yu and landed on the screen of light outside Su Ming's room. He could not see Su Ming, but Su Ming could see him. You killed Tai Ci family's guards. Yu family will have to give us an explanation for this. 3 days later, I will go to your Yu family's auction hall in Blackwater City. The young man smiled faintly and tapped his left hand with the fan before turning around, looking as if he was about to leave. Su Ming cast a glance at the young man who was about to turn around and leave, and a faint smile suddenly appeared on his face. Lai Shan family, since you brought out a statue of the god of berserkers to test me, then I will also test you to see whether there are still berserkers in your hearts. Kill all of them. His voice was incredibly flat, but once it traveled out of the screen of light, it immediately turned into a roar that caused all those who heard it to feel their hearts tremble. Even the young man turned around swiftly, and a powerful, freezing glare appeared in his eyes. The 3 old men behind him who had their eyes closed opened their eyes at the same time. At that moment, the first to move was the Duke of Crimson Flame. As he laughed ferociously, he took a step forward. Soon after, it was Yu's turn. Her expression was elegant, and there was not a hint of emotion on her face. She only frowned slightly, but she had already floated forward and charged towards the young man. Killing intent filled the young man's eyes, but he retreated swiftly. By his side, Yun Long, who let out a low growl and charged towards the incoming Duke of Crimson Flame. As for the 3 old men who had opened their eyes, one of them stopped Yu, and another closed in on Yu Chenhai, who was already shocked by the development of this matter. As for the last one, he rushed through the screen of light in Su Ming's room and charged towards him. The cultivators in the area burst into an uproar. The auction had come to a complete halt at that moment. The fight between the Yu family and the Tai Ci family had become the most important matter at that moment. They swiftly retreated, unwilling to join the fight. In fact, there were quite a number of cultivators who had already wanted to leave the auction hall, but when they moved back, they discovered that the entrance to the auction hall had been sealed off by a screen of light, and they could not leave. In fact, some of the more intelligent people had long since noticed that even though this sort of thing had happened in the auction hall, not a single member of the Lai Shan family had appeared. Even the person who had hosted the auction just now had disappeared. Guru Songqing had also gone missing. This was an incredibly bizarre thing. After all, once a battle of arts like this happened in an auction hall, the family that owned the auction hall would usually immediately appear to stop the fight and discuss a solution. Just as the hearts of the people in the area were in shock, a loud bang shook the entire auction hall. The old man who had rushed into the screen of light in Su Ming's room tumbled backwards. As blood gushed out of his mouth, his body started shattering right before everyone's eyes. Terror appeared on his face, and his gaze was fixed on the person who had walked out of the screen of light at that moment. The person who had long gray hair, long white robes, a calm expression, and an indescribable, awe-inspiring air about him was Su Ming. There were 2 big dogs by his side. One of them was black, and the other was yellow. The big yellow dog was baring its teeth and growling. Once the big black dog noticed the big yellow dog's actions, it also started baring its teeth and growling, putting on an expression that said that it was very fierce and very powerful. Su Ming walked out slowly. His appearance immediately attracted the gazes of almost all the people in the area. He did not look at the young man, neither did he look at the other people. Instead, he lifted his head and looked at the area above the auction hall, then smiled faintly. His smile appeared in the illusory screen of light in front of the dozen-something members of the Lai Shan family. They looked at Su Ming, and they even had a feeling that he was also looking at them. Elder Feng looked at Su Ming in the screen of light quietly. A crease slowly appeared between his brows, and a hint of uncertainty appeared briefly in his eyes. I want to see Lai Shan Xiao. Su Ming's voice traveled out of the screen of light and echoed in the ears of the members of the Lai Shan family. I'm asking for recommendation votes on Monday. I'm calling for recommendation votes. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 985. The expressions of the members of the Lai Shan family in the chamber varied when they heard Su Ming's voice coming through the screen of light. Some of them narrowed their eyes, some of them had skepticism on their faces, and there were also some who had disdain on their faces. Lai Shan Xiao was the supreme progenitor of the Lai Shan family. Forget outsiders, even most of the members of the family had never seen the progenitor before. Even those who had seen him before had only seen him from afar. It was rare for them to be summoned to meet him alone. Right then, this unknown person had actually made this request. In the eyes of many of the family members, his words were a little too arrogant and conceited. However, while these family members had different thoughts in their hearts, but did not show them on their faces, Elder Feng shook his head while standing in front of them. What a lively little fellow. The frown on Elder Feng's face slowly disappeared. There might still be hesitation in his eyes, but a smile appeared on his face. He looked at Su Ming, and the smile on his face was filled with joy and glee. It was like a senior who saw that a member of the younger generation had made a name for himself, and it came from the bottom of his heart. As for his act of shaking his head, it was also a sign of kindness and helplessness toward the member of the younger generation. In fact, his smile grew wider, and eventually, Elder Feng started laughing loudly. That happy expression had not appeared on his face for tens of thousands of years. His hearty laughter caused all the members of the Lai Shan family to look at each other at a loss. This boy is a little mischievous, but I am the scion of the Wind Berserker. How dare a mere member of the Tai Ci family provoke me? As Elder Feng mumbled, a domineering aura that looked down on the world spread out from his body. The members of the Lai Shan family behind him were instantly shocked. They lowered their heads and did not speak. They had never seen Elder Feng, who had such a high status in the Lai Shan family, smile so happily. In their memories, Feng Lai might not have the surname of Lai Shan, but he was one of the 4 great generals by their progenitor's side. He had followed Lai Shan progenitor for many years, and they were as close as brothers. Elder Feng was a very strict person, and there was also a proud and aloof attitude in his heart. He had been in Lai Shan family for many years, and his status was very high, but he had never had a partner, and neither did he have any children. He usually went into isolated training alone, and he did not even have any disciples. There was once a senior in the family who came to meet Elder Feng and begged him to take some of the talented people in the family as his disciples, but all of them were rejected by Elder Feng. When he rejected them, he once said one sentence, and that sentence gradually spread through the entire Lai Shan family. Gradually, no one came to beg Elder Feng to take them as disciples anymore. I have a disciple. I don't know who this disciple is, and I've never met him before. However, I do have a disciple and a successor. This person is my only disciple. Perhaps I won't be able to see this disciple for the rest of my life, but I will only take one disciple in my life. As he laughed, his mumbles were naturally not heard by the members of Lai Shan family behind him. They saw the chaos in the auction hall through the screen of light. As Su Ming's words traveled outwards, Yu Ro, the Duke of Crimson Flame, and Yu Chun Hai were fighting against the cultivators from the Tai Ci family. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. After all, this was Lai Shan family's auction hall, and after tens of thousands of years of reproduction, not all the members of Lai Shan family were like Lai Shan Kongjiao. When a number of family members increased, each of them had their own connections and connections. At that moment, there was an old man among the family members behind Elder Feng, and he had an incredibly close relationship with the Tai Ci family. The old man hesitated for a moment before he took a step forward and wrapped his fist in his palm to speak respectfully. Elder Feng, do you think we should take action to stop this fight? The smile on Elder Feng's face instantly disappeared, and he returned to his cold and sinister look. He did not even turn his head around. However, That one word was like a gust of freezing wind blowing against the old man's body, causing him to shudder. He felt as if his entire body had turned cold, and his face instantly turned pale. "Why should we stop it?" Elder Feng asked flatly, and the chamber immediately fell into dead silence. This Elder Feng's appearance was the one in the memories of the members of Lai Shan family. Elder Feng. The Tai Ci family is one of the 3 greatest families in the world, and Blackwater City is under their control. If anything happens to their family members here, then Lai Shan family will definitely provoke the Tai Ci family. The old man shuddered and quickly tried to explain himself. He had a feeling that if he did not explain himself clearly, he would immediately freeze to death. The rules in the Lai Shan family were incredibly strict, and Elder Feng's other identity was to monitor the members of the Lai Shan family. He had the power to decide their life and death, and it was not as if Elder Feng had never used this power. Instead, he had used it multiple times, and every single time he used it, someone from the Lai Shan family would die. Besides, the progenitor of the Lai Shan family, Lai Shan Xiao, did not care about this at all. Because of it, the Lai Shan family and Blacking Planet were incredibly respectful towards Elder Feng. "You're right," Elder Feng said flatly. When the old man from the Lai Shan family heard these words, he immediately let out a sigh of relief in his heart. At that moment, his back was already drenched in sweat, and cold sweat was breaking out on his skin. Yet right at the instant he relaxed, Elder Feng's chilling voice echoed in the air once again. "Lock down all the exits of the auction hall and activate the Great Isolation Rune. Besides the members of the Yu family, no one is allowed to go out, or else you will be killed without question." Elder Feng's voice was calm, but there was a chilling, murderous aura contained within that calm voice that was enough to make the hearts of all the members of the Lai Shan family tremble. They might not understand why Elder Feng would say these words, but with the prestige he had accumulated over the years, no one dared to refute him. All of them instantly lowered their heads and voiced their obedience. As the members of the Lai Shan family dispersed to carry out Elder Feng's orders, the chilling aura around Elder Feng's body gradually faded away. A joyful look appeared on his face, and as he looked at Su Ming, who seemed to be looking at him through the screen of light, the more he looked at him, the more he liked him. "Huh, this boy is good, very good." As he laughed, Elder Feng lifted his right hand and swung it at the screen of light. Immediately, wind blew past it and stirred up a layer of ripples, causing the screen of light to distort. "Lai Shan progenitor isn't here, boy," Elder Feng said with a smile. This time, his voice penetrated the light screen and reverberated in the auction house. Su Ming frowned. Booming sounds were echoing around him. Yuro was fighting against the old man. She had the upper hand, but the old man's body was incredibly sturdy, as if he had refined his body. Most of the effects of divine abilities and arts on him were largely reduced. As for the Duke of Crimson Flame, he was fighting on equal grounds with the old guest from the Tai Ci family. However, this made things difficult for Yu Chenhai. He was absolutely not the other old man's opponent. As the booming sounds echoed in the air, he was forced back repeatedly. If it were not for the black and yellow mouths that would occasionally ambush the old man in a dirty manner and pull him back, then Yu Chenhai would have definitely been heavily injured. "How dare you act so treacherously? This is Blackwater City. This is the city of the Tai Ci family. How dare you attack a member of the Tai Ci family? You will not be able to leave Blackwater City. You will regret provoking us. You will suffer the wrath of the Tai Ci family." The young man with the fan in his hand screamed shrilly at that moment. There was not a hint of panic on his face. He might have been retreating, but his words had turned into a piercing sound that reverberated in the air. He had the confidence to do so because this was Blackwater City, and because this was where the Tai Ci family was located. He did not believe that anyone would dare to kill him in this place. If the puny Yu family dared to do so, then Blacking City would have to pay the price of having their entire family destroyed. Su Ming averted his gaze from the area above him and did not even spare the young man a glance. He turned around and took a step forward. Right before the thousands of people in the area, his body distorted, and when he reappeared, he was right in front of Yu Chunhai. At that moment, Yu Chunhai was in a disheveled state and was swiftly retreating. The expressionless old man before him was clearly already used to the two big dogs tearing at him, which did not have much offensive power. At that moment, he completely ignored them and closed in on Yu Chunhai. Su Ming's appearance immediately made Yu Chunhai excited, and it also made the incoming old man freeze in his footsteps. But at the instant his feet stopped moving, Su Ming lifted his right hand and hurled a punch towards the old man. That punch contained all the qi in Su Ming's body, all the power of his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, and even his power of divine essence. When he hurled it forward, cracking sounds came from his body. With that one punch, wind stirred and clouds surged in the auction hall. All the air currents instantly gathered together and fused into Su Ming's fist. Booming sounds that sliced through the air rose into the air, and even space itself started cracking and shattering. The punch landed on the old man's chest in an instant. Boom! As a loud bang reverberated in the air, all the methods the old man used to block the punch were unable to stop it in the slightest. In the midst of that loud bang, he coughed up blood and immediately fell backwards. During the process, his body started showing signs of crumbling. As he crumbled, his body seemed to possess some sort of power that could reverse the flow of time. As he crumbled, he started recovering, but the divine essence contained in Su Ming's fist stopped this process of recovery. When the old man fell back, the two big dogs by his side, which had already caused him to let down his guard, suddenly put on incredibly dirty smiles at each other. As soon as the smile appeared, the big yellow dog swung its head. In an instant, the dog's head was torn apart, and a ferocious dragon head emerged. The dragon head was so big that it was completely disproportionate to its body. As soon as it appeared, it bit the old man, who was in disbelief. With just one bite, half of his body was gone. The big black dog by the side let out a howl and also swung its head, turning into the bald crane's bald head. Perhaps it had not originally intended to bite the old man, but when it saw the abyss dragon's actions, it immediately thought that this appearance was incredibly mighty, which was why a thought appeared in its head, and, as it cackled in a piercing voice, it used its sharp beak to stab the old man's groin. Then, it immediately turned into a gust of black wind and started searching through the old man's body. The old man died in an incredibly aggrieved manner. He did not die under Su Ming's punch, but in the abyss dragon's mouth. His soul and nascent divinity were all absorbed by the abyss dragon, and once he died, all his belongings were taken away by the bald crane. He had not expected that one of the two dogs would be a dragon. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 986. Once the old man died and his body was devoured by the abyss dragon, he turned into the big yellow dog once again. He even wagged his tail non-stop and winked at the bald crane, who had also turned into a big black dog, as if both of them were feeling smug. How was it? Grandpa Crane's plan was good, right? Ha. Clearly, it had been led astray by the bald crane's side. Is that a dragon? That's not a dog either, it's a big bird. These two ferocious beasts are too despicable. So they've been pretending to be weak all this while. We have to be careful of these two ferocious beasts, especially that big bird. It's too shameless, too cruel. How could it? The cultivators who were watching the fight in the area were dumbfounded by the bald crane and the abyss dragon's transformation. They had never seen ferocious beasts that could be so despicable and despicable. All of them immediately became wary and memorized the bald crane and the abyss dragon's appearances. The bald crane's ferocious actions just now were especially shocking, and they felt as if they were experiencing the same thing as the dead old man. In fact, their wariness towards the bald crane surpassed that of many of the terrifying creatures in their minds. After all, that ferocious strike was enough to make all male cultivators' skins crawl and their hearts tremble. That big bird. I saw it take away the storage bag just now and even make an inventory of it. It seemed to be very displeased with it. Damn it, if there's such a big bird, then its master is definitely the same. We can't provoke this person. We absolutely cannot provoke him. As the cultivators in the area buzzed with shock, the black dog that had turned into the bald crane swept its gaze around the area in dissatisfaction. Its personality was rather simple. The ferocious strike just then had been thought of on the spur of the moment, but when it saw the terrified looks on the faces of the people around it, it suddenly thought that it could use that strike often. As it thought about it, it started cackling. Its expression, laughter, and gaze immediately caused all the cultivators who were stared to feel their skins crawl again. Su Ming did not bother himself with the vulgarity between the bald crane and the abyss dragon. His expression was indifferent, and he still did not look at the pale-faced young man. Instead, he walked towards the other puppet-like old man who was fighting against Uro. 2 of the 3 old men had already died. It was as if only at the moment of their deaths would their expressions become slightly more real. During the rest of the time, they would remain apathetic. This was clearly a puppet, and it was one that Su Ming was familiar with, a soul catcher's puppet. His footsteps were not quick, but with each step he took, he would cause the entire auction hall to tremble. As he stepped in the air, countless ripples spread out in the air, causing the apathetic expression of the old man fighting against Uro to change slightly. He actually gave up on fighting against Uro and retreated without hesitation. Su Ming let out a cold harumph. If this old man was truly a powerful warrior in the later stage of World Plane Realm, then it would have been impossible for Su Ming to kill him with just one punch. However, this old man was a soul catcher's puppet, and Su Ming was a soul catcher. Killing this sort of puppet gave him a natural suppression. The puppet's indestructible body was so weak that it could not even withstand a single blow from Su Ming. Most of its strange divine abilities and arts were related to soul catchers, and Su Ming did not care about them. Everything about the puppet was suppressed by him, so there was no way he could fight against Su Ming. The suppression on his soul made it so that he could not bring out his full strength. Su Ming's expression did not change when he saw the puppet fleeing, but the expressions of the young man, not too far in the distance, and the guest of Tai Ci family, who was fighting against the Duke of Crimson Flame, immediately changed. They understood the 3 puppets and knew that they did not fear pain. The fluctuations of their emotions were barely noticeable, and they did not know what fear was. Yet, right then, Su Ming had only just approached them, and they had already made the puppet flee in an unprecedented manner. This sort of thing left them in disbelief for a period of time. Su Ming walked toward the puppet. His footsteps were not quick, but there was a faint presence of a soul catcher around him at that moment. His eyes were as profound as vortexes, and a powerful pressure descended on the puppet with a bang. In fact, at that moment, the small candle dragon Su Ming had left behind beside his Akang clone in Western Ring, Nebula's foreign land, lifted its head swiftly and hissed. A dark light shone in its eyes. It was a ferocious beast that was connected to Su Ming's soul. It could sense the ripples of power coming from Su Ming's soul, and it could also sense that he was walking towards a soul catcher's puppet. It immediately formed a connection with Su Ming's soul, and it was this connection that caused the space behind Su Ming to distort as he walked forward, and the candle dragon's shadow could be vaguely seen. At the instant that shadow appeared and Su Ming approached the puppet, the old puppet shuddered and gave up on escaping. As it trembled, it knelt down before Su Ming, not daring to move even a single inch. At the instant it knelt down, the expression of the old guest from the Tai Ci family, who was fighting against the Duke of Crimson Flame, changed drastically. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, which turned into blood fog that exploded in the area, blocking off the Duke of Crimson Flame's divine ability. The old guest retreated without any hesitation and arrived beside the young man who had been shocked by the scene and whose face was filled with terror. He grabbed the young man's body and retreated swiftly. For the first time, he shouted at the Lai Shan family. Lai Shan family, this is your auction hall. Why aren't you showing yourself and attacking? If anything happens to the young master here, then your entire Lai Shan family will die with him." The old man's words snapped the pale young man out of his daze. When he was grabbed and retreated, he immediately let out a shrill scream. "Lai Shan family, I'm ordering you to kill this person." As the two of them retreated and their words traveled through the air, booming sounds immediately reverberated in the air around the auction hall. Multiple figures appeared, and all of them were members of the Lai Shan family. In fact, Yin Longhu, the Lai Shan family member who had hosted the auction just now, and Lai Shan Kangjiu were among these people. They surrounded the auction hall. Their appearance immediately caused the cultivators in the area to let out a sigh of relief. They knew that the Lai Shan family had interfered in this matter. After all, this was the Lai Shan family's auction hall. They would not allow a fight to break out in this place, much less allow a member of the Tai Ci family to die in this place. This was obvious, and it was the common understanding in all the cultivators' hearts. It was also what the young man and Tai Ci family's guests thought. At the same time they let out a sigh of relief in their hearts, they swiftly retreated, intending to instantly leave the place. Once they left, then the Tai Ci family's full-force revenge would be on them. In fact, the young man was already cruelly thinking that once he got out, he would cry and beg the elders of his family to attack and crush Su Ming to pieces, but he would not die. He wanted Su Ming to see him ravage and torture the servant girl. In fact, he even cast Su Ming a glance with a cold sneer on his lips. Su Ming's handsomeness caused another lustful thought to rise in the young man's head. It was as if besides ravaging the servant girl, he could also ravage Su Ming. As he thought of this, the young man began to laugh lasciviously. But after a few breaths of time, his smile froze. A booming sound interrupted his laughter. He and the clan vassal were just about to leave when they were suddenly stopped by an invisible shield of light and bounced back. This was Lai Shan family's protective screen of light. It was the great rune that protected the entire auction hall, and it was not something that could be broken within a short period of time. The old guest's expression changed, and a hint of disbelief and terror appeared in his eyes. "Lai Shan family, what is the meaning of this?" The old man forced himself to speak. A bad feeling rose in his heart, but he did not believe that Lai Shan family would do such a thing. However, the truth before his eyes was something he had to believe. In fact, he could also see that none of the members of Lai Shan family had attacked Su Ming and the others once they appeared. They only stood there and did not move. The old man instinctively cast a glance at a person he was familiar with in Lai Shan family's auction hall. But when he looked over, that person avoided his gaze, and this made the Tai Ci family's guest instantly feel his heart let out a loud thump. No one replied to his words. Instead, an old man's laughter echoed from above the auction hall. Along with the laughter, an old man walked out from the void. That old man had an ancient face, and no one could tell how many tens of thousands of years he had lived. When he walked out, wind howled around him, causing the air around him to immediately shatter. In fact, there seemed to be an eye of a typhoon behind the old man where the wind was coming from. The eye of the typhoon was round, and when it looked like a sun. At the instant the guest of Tai Ci family saw the old man, shock instantly appeared on his face. He staggered a few steps backwards, and his face immediately turned pale. The young man by his side was trembling and could not even speak. A mighty pressure that almost suffocated him descended on the entire auction hall when the old man appeared. "Greetings, Elder Feng." All the members of Lai Shan family immediately bowed towards the old man. When he spoke, the thousands of cultivators in the auction hall trembled under that mighty pressure. They lowered their heads and worshipped the old man, their hearts filled with shock. They had heard of Elder Feng's name before. He was in existence in the legends of Lai Shan family. The Duke of Crimson Flame's expression was incredibly grave. In a flash, he appeared beside Su Ming. He could also sense the mighty pressure from Elder Feng's body, and even he felt as if his body was being bound by mud. "Young master, this person is at least in Solar Culpa realm." Yu Ro's veil fluttered at that moment. She trembled. She could not withstand the mighty pressure from Elder Feng, much less Yu Qinhai. He had already prostrated himself on the ground. Even the big yellow dog that was the abyss dragon did not dare move as it trembled. Only the big yellow dog that was the bald crane continued wagging its tail, putting on an expression that said, "I'm your grandpa crane, so what can you do to me? What's your name?" The entire auction hall fell into dead silence due to Elder Feng's appearance. With a smile on his face, Elder Feng asked languidly to Su Ming. His smile and languid voice immediately caused all the members of Lai Shan family who knew him to immediately have countless guesses. "I am Su Ming. Greetings, my teacher." Su Ming looked at Elder Feng, and after some time, a smile appeared on his face. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed towards him. Elder Feng's eyes lit up, and he laughed heartily. Requesting recommendation tickets to be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to give me recommendation votes or monthly votes. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 987. Su Ming's words immediately caused the expressions of all the cultivators in the auction hall to change. It was especially so for the old guest from the Tai Ci family and the young man. Disbelief appeared on their faces. They believed that Su Ming was a member of the Yu family, so his bow was equivalent to him forming an alliance with the Lai Shan family. Even if the Tai Ci family did not seem to care about the alliance between two middle-sized families, they were, after all, in Lai Shan family's auction hall. "Fellow Daoist, so you're an old friend with the Lai Shan family. It's a misunderstanding, The old guest from the Tai Ci family immediately let out a fake cough and laughed before wrapping his fist in his palm towards Su Ming. "This is the fault of the Tai Ci family. I hope that the Yu family and Lai Shan family will not mind." The old guest from the Tai Ci family reacted quickly and quickly laughed, putting on a humble front. In his mind, the Lai Shan family should not kill the two of them. After all, it was not worth it. Yet before he could finish speaking, Elder Feng frowned, standing before Su Ming. Noisy, a cold and dark voice tumbled out of Elder Feng's mouth, and it immediately turned into a thunderous roar. When it reverberated in the auction hall, it shook the old man from the Tai Ci family so much that his heart trembled. Blood also flowed out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. He staggered a few steps backwards, and his face instantly turned stark pale. The young man beside him also had fear on his face. He trembled even more violently. He was afraid. This could be said to be the first time he had truly felt fear since he was born. He suddenly felt incredibly regretful, but it was already too late. He did not know why the Lai Shan family had kept him around, and he still could not believe that the Lai Shan family would dare to wage war against the Tai Ci family. "There's only one person in the world and the boundless universe who can call me teacher. That person might be you, but perhaps it might not be you." Elder Feng looked at Su Ming. There was still a smile on his face, but there was a hint of uncertainty hidden in the depths of his eyes, causing him to be unable to truly determine Su Ming's identity. This was practically impossible in his eyes, because if Su Ming was the scion found by the projection he had left in the land of berserkers, then he would definitely be able to sense Su Ming very clearly. But while he could sense Su Ming at that moment, there was also a hint of a mighty pressure that caused even his qi and blood to tumble faintly in his body. Elder Feng could not help but wonder what was going on. "You'll know once you try." Once Su Ming wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed once again, he stood up straight and lifted his right hand slowly. His fingers were pointed upwards, as if he was holding something in the air. Elder Feng's eyes lit up, and as his smile became even more kind, he lifted his right hand as well. By the looks of it, his actions were exactly the same as Su Ming's. This scene immediately attracted the gazes of the people in the area, especially the members of the Lai Shan family. They stared at Su Ming without blinking. When they saw that Su Ming and Elder Feng's actions were exactly the same, most of them remembered the words Elder Feng had said about his disciple in the past. "Kaiyan." Su Ming lifted his head swiftly and seized the air above him with his right hand. Immediately, an endless amount of violent wind appeared out of nowhere in the auction hall. As it howled, It gathered on Su Ming's right hand. When anyone looked over, it looked as if Su Ming's right hand had turned into the eye of a typhoon. The violent wind spun swiftly in his hand, and a vast amount of power spread out from it. Kai Yang. As Elder Feng smiled, he also spoke. He swung his right hand casually, and a whirlwind that was exactly the same as the eye of the typhoon in Su Ming's right hand appeared in his right hand. The two of them took a step forward at the same time and closed in on each other in the span of a breath. Boom! A loud bang instantly reverberated in all directions. It was a clash between two young Kai berserkers. It was a spar between the previous Wind Berserker and the current Wind Berserker. It was a test between the Saiyans and the Saiyans. In the midst of the booming sounds, Su Ming was forced back several hundreds of feet. A brilliant light shone in his eyes, and he looked at Elder Feng, who was several hundreds of feet away from him. He lifted his right hand and hurled a punch towards the air above the auction hall. At the instant he did so, he swiftly rushed forward. Su Ming did not move in a straight line. When he rushed forward, he started spinning. He spun in circles, and the instant he did so, the number of people watching him could no longer be counted. As he did so, layers of violent gusts of wind let out furious howls, and with Su Ming as the center, they started spinning swiftly in the direction he was spinning. At the same time, a wave of hot air spread out from Su Ming's body as he spun around. It was swept into the vortex of wind and started spreading outwards. Yet at that moment, the punch Su Ming had thrown just now had stirred up a large amount of freezing air for some unknown reason. That freezing air and the hot air underneath were centered around the vortex of wind. One of them rose, and the other sank. At the instant they crashed into each other, Su Ming's voice and the roaring wind traveled forth at the same time. Burial. Elder Feng laughed loudly, and his laughter was filled with joy that came from the depths of his heart. He lifted his left hand and swung it casually above his head. Immediately, freezing air spread outwards with his left hand as the center. He swung his right hand downwards as well, and hot air instantly spread out from his right hand. As he brought his hands together before him, hot and cold air instantly intersected with each other, and wind appeared. You haven't mastered the burial of darkness yet. You've only grasped a small part of it. You haven't understood its essence. Looks like you haven't been training seriously. Elder Feng put his hands together, and wind roared. Watch closely. This is the burial of darkness. Elder Feng opened his joined hands, and at the same time, a ball of wind that was spinning rapidly grew within his hands. As he pushed forward, the ball of wind charged towards Su Ming and crashed into the windstorm formed by Su Ming's burial of darkness. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud bangs shook the entire auction hall. Su Ming was also forced back 100-something feet each time those bangs rang out. The burial of darkness around him completely shattered, and once the ball of wind Elder Feng pushed out destroyed all of it, it closed in on Su Ming. However, by the looks of it, it did not seem like it wanted to harm him. Instead, once it touched the center of Su Ming's brows, it would disappear on its own. This was a clear sign that Elder Feng was slightly displeased with Su Ming's 3 styles wind separation and wanted to teach him a lesson. It was as if a senior wanted to punish a junior who was not training seriously. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He was the Wind Berserker, but his other identity was the 4th god of berserkers, and his other identity was the Akang clone in the universe. In fact, he was even a direct descendant of the Abyss Builders. Besides being the Wind Berserker, all of these identities did not allow Su Ming to let the ball of wind land at the center of his brows. That was why as his eyes sparkled, Su Ming did not move back. Instead, at the instant the ball of wind closed in on him, the sun, moon, and stars suddenly appeared in his eyes, along with a layer of divine essence runic symbols. As they fused together, they stirred up the strange power that came from the 3 gates of heavenly Tao that had fused into his illusion of stars, sun, and moon. Under normal circumstances, I cannot cast wind separation, but with my divine ability, I can cast an art that is similar to wind separation. As Su Ming spoke calmly, the sun and moon in his eyes abruptly shone brightly. With a bang, with Su Ming as the center, as the sun and moon shone brightly and as stars appeared under his feet, the thousands of people in the auction hall felt their hearts roar. Their vision instantly became blurry, and they had the misconception that the world had turned upside down and they had been forcefully dragged into some sort of dimension. The world they saw was different at that moment. It was a world created based on the memories they did not want to recall the most, causing all the people in the auction hall to sink into it against their will. Sun, moon, and stars, wind separation, Su Ming said softly. The ball of wind before him came to an abrupt halt at that instant. It was only a few inches away from Su Ming, but those few inches seemed to have turned into a ravine that could not be crossed. The true wind separation could make the world in which the person was located, because he was the progenitor of wind, which was why with just a single thought, he could make the entire universe void of wind. It was like a world. This was something Su Ming could not do, but with the illusion of stars, sun, and moon working together with the strange power from the three gates of heavenly Tao, he could create an illusory world. This illusory world was an illusion, and within it he could make no wind. If that was all, then an illusion would just be an illusion. Everything would still be fake, but the power contained within the three gates of heavenly Tao was something that Su Ming still could not completely grasp and understand. It was a strange power that could turn illusions into reality and illusions into reality. Because of it, Su Ming's illusion would no longer be completely illusory. There would be a hint of reality contained within it. Su Ming was not the key to determining whether the illusion was real or not, but the thousands of people in it. As long as most of these people believed that the illusion was real, then this place would be real. All of this might sound abstruse, but in truth, even Su Ming was still in the process of figuring out this art. It could be said that this was the first time he truly executed it. Su Ming could not maintain this art for long. He did not know whether it was a coincidence, but he could only last for 3 breaths when he executed this art. The 3 breaths ended in an instant, and the world before everyone's eyes shattered. When everything returned to normal, most of the people in the area had dazed expressions on their faces. Only Elder Feng's eyes shone brilliantly as he looked at Su Ming. The ball of wind before Su Ming had disappeared. This is another wind separation art I've seen. You are not bad, very good. The Tao of Tao is ever-changing, and there are plenty of changes in it. It doesn't mean that only my epiphany is correct, but the one that suits me the most is the correct path. The wind separation art you modified is very good. A smile gradually appeared on Elder Feng's face. That smile was filled with happiness, and it had been tens of thousands of years since he had felt this happy. As he smiled, Elder Feng shook his head, and his expression swiftly became stern. He even took a few steps back and looked at Su Ming with rapt attention. Then he slowly wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed deeply towards him. I, the wind berserker of the berserkers, greet the god of berserkers. Sir, may I know which god of berserkers you are? If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 988. As Elder Feng's expression became stern and he wrapped his fist in his palm to bow towards Su Ming, the cultivators in the area who had snapped out of their daze were immediately stunned when they heard his words. Berserkers, wind berserker, god of berserkers. They did not know what these 3 terms meant, but based on Elder Feng's grave expression, they could tell that this was clearly not a secret an ordinary cultivator could hear. Yet now, they had heard it, and all the smarter ones could instantly tell what would happen to them if they heard a secret they should not hear. In fact, some of the cultivators had already started retreating slowly, but with the great protection rune of Lai Shan family's auction hall around them, they could not leave. Elder Feng's bow also caused the expressions of all the members of the Lai Shan family to change. They were members of the Lai Shan family, so they naturally knew what cultivation method they practiced. They also understood the origins of their family. However, there was a seal in their blood causing others to be unable to find out the details even if they used all sorts of soul-searching methods. Besides, the secrecy of this matter was the foundation of the Lai Shan family's rules. It was not as if no one had ever made a mistake during the course of countless years, but all of those mistakes were resolved in an unseen manner. Those who deserved to die were killed, and those who deserved to be destroyed were destroyed, causing the Lai Shan family to always be a middle-sized family in the eyes of outsiders. Right then, as Elder Feng bowed to them, the members of the Lai Shan family looked at each other at a loss. Lai Shan Kong Jio's heart trembled. He suddenly understood why he had lost his composure when he was facing Su Ming previously. He sucked in a deep breath and was the first among the members of the Lai Shan family to wrap his fist in his palm and bow towards Su Ming. I, Lai Shan Kong Jio, greet the God of Berserkers. Greetings, God of Berserkers. Greetings, God of Berserkers. These words tumbled out of the Lai Shan family members' mouths one after another, and their voices rose and fell, echoing through the entire auction hall. The smile on Su Ming's face disappeared at that moment, and it turned into an awe-inspiring look. He stood in midair and looked at Elder Feng calmly. At that moment, he was no longer the Wind Berserker, but the fourth God of Berserkers, who had an awe-inspiring rank. Elder Feng, please rise. I am the fourth God of Berserkers, Su Ming said flatly. When Elder Feng heard his words, he lifted his head and looked at Su Ming. There was kindness in his eyes, along with a bright light. There was also a deep love and concern within them. Ever since he saw that Su Ming was his scion, he was certain that Su Ming was his one and only disciple who would inherit his legacy. It was especially so when he found what made him hesitate. It was the acknowledgement from the land of Berserkers, the will of the universe in the land of Berserkers, and the will of the God of Berserkers placed in the hearts of countless Berserkers. His love for Su Ming turned into pride. It's been passed down for 4 generations. It's been many years since I left with the Lord back then, Elder Feng said as he shook his head. He seemed to be reminiscing the past. As he shook his head, he waved his right hand. Lai Shan family, heed my orders. Activate the formation and kill all those who are participating in the auction. As soon as Elder Feng's words came out, the surrounding cultivators' expressions changed drastically. I'm willing to swear an oath that I won't reveal anything about what happened today. You're just a measly Lai Shan family. There are thousands of us here. How are you going to kill us? Chaotic voices instantly reverberated in the air, but soon they turned into shrill screams of pain. The light from the rune in the auction hall shone endlessly. As booming sounds reverberated in the air, the people from the Lai Shan family started slaughtering the people in the area. However, there were not many people from the Lai Shan family. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to kill thousands of people. But as the rune was activated, thousands of presences descended with a bang. These thousands of presences turned into thousands of men. Berserker marks spread out on these men's bodies. Their eyes were blank, but a vast amount of chi erupted from them. For a period of time, screams of pain rang out endlessly in the auction hall. After a moment, as their voices faded away, the thousands of cultivators in the auction hall all died, and blood dyed almost every spot in the auction hall red. This slaughter came too suddenly and too quickly, causing the old guest of the Tai Ci family and the young man to be completely shocked. As for the 2 people from the Tai Ci family, how will you deal with them? God of Berserkers? Elder Feng looked at Su Ming. This is the Lai Shan family. Elder Feng, you can deal with them. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever, but his heart was still shaken by the slaughter just now. Elder Feng's casual attitude and the blood that covered the entire floor formed a stark contrast. All those who offend the God of Berserkers will be executed. Elder Feng turned around, and for the first time, he cast his gaze on the old guest of the Tai Ci family and the young man. The old guest of the Tai Ci family had a pale face. At that moment, he grabbed the young man, intending to retreat. However, the moment he took a step forward, Elder Feng lifted his hand and swung it lightly. Lai Shan family, how dare you? If you kill me, your Lai Shan family will die with me. I have my family's life jade on me. Once I die, the family will immediately know that an accident happened in Lai Shan Auction Hall. The young man screamed shrilly, but almost at the moment he finished speaking, his voice turned into blood. With that one swing of Elder Feng's arm, an endless amount of wind instantly appeared around his body. As it charged forward, the young man lost his flesh and blood, turning into bones that shattered in an instant. As for the old guest of the Tai Ci family, he had his full power erupt at that moment of life and death. Gigantic virescent logs surrounded his body and resisted the wind around him. However, he only managed to resist for the span of several breaths. With a cold harumph from Elder Feng, the 9 virescent logs around the old guest's body shattered, and the old man's body was torn to shreds with a roar filled with unwillingness to admit defeat. This scene caused the Duke of Crimson Flame's pupils to shrink. Yuro also focused her attention on the scene, but she did not say a single word. As for the Abyss Dragon and the Bald Crane, one of them was nervous, and the other was indifferent and lazy. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he looked towards Elder Feng. Will killing a member of the Tai Ci family affect the Lai Shan family? Fourth God of Berserkers has just arrived in Black Ink Planet, so there are many things he doesn't know yet. Oh well, let us see the true power of the current Lai Shan family. Elder Feng smiled faintly. He lifted his right hand and swung it forward. Immediately, booming sounds rose in the area, and a gigantic, illusory screen of light instantly appeared. As the screen of light twisted and flickered, it slowly became clear. A bird's eye view of the entire Blackwater City appeared on it. They could see the gigantic pool and the countless buildings in it. They could also see Lai Shan family's auction hall among them. The auction hall was incredibly quiet at that moment. The thousands of men had become indistinct and gradually disappeared. As for the members of the Lai Shan family, they started cleaning up the auction hall. They would occasionally lift their heads to look at Su Ming and Elder Feng, but all of them were silent. As they cleaned up the place, the stench of blood in the place gradually lessened. Su Ming looked at the screen of light calmly. He was incredibly curious about the Lai Shan family's strength. The first god of berserkers, Lai Shan Xiao, had managed to rise to power with his own strength and even created the Berserkers dynasty. If such a person had stayed in Black Ink Planet for tens of thousands of years, then Su Ming would have been slightly disappointed if he had only created a middle-tier family. However, based on Elder Feng's actions and words, it seemed like the Lai Shan family did not care about the Tai Ci family at all. In fact, they did not care about all the families in Black Ink Planet. After Su Ming stared at the screen of light for a moment, he suddenly noticed that the entire Blackwater City seemed to have fallen silent. All the cultivators on the stone bridges had lifted their heads. In the midst of this silence, as all the people lifted their heads, Su Ming immediately saw bell chimes reverberating swiftly from the gigantic building at the center of Blackwater City. As the bell chimes rang, the sky distorted and figures manifested. The weather changed. As they swept out in all directions, a gigantic, mighty pressure descended on Blackwater City with a bang. Soon after, as more figures appeared in the sky, a hall that was several hundreds of thousands of feet tall descended slowly in the midst of the wind and clouds. There were clear words written on that hall, Great Kindness Hall. By Tai Ci's order, all members of the Lai Shan family will be killed in Blackwater City. The Lai Shan family will be removed from Black Ink Planet. An awe-inspiring voice boomed like thunder from the Great Kindness Hall in the sky. As it reverberated in the air, hundreds of figures appeared in the sky and charged towards the Lai Shan family's auction hall in Blackwater City. Blackwater City is controlled by the Tai Ci family, a branch of a shaman Dao that descended from the other worlds. Ink Kirin City is owned by the Mo family from Divine Essence Star Ocean, and Worldly Star City is built by the Hua family, who is supported by the 4 Great True Worlds. They're the 3 greatest families in Black Ink Planet, but Black Ink Planet is ours. Elder Feng's voice was flat, but there was an invisible, domineering air within it. As he spoke, he did not bother hiding it. As Elder Feng's words traveled outwards, Su Ming immediately saw the entire Blackwater city trembling violently through the screen of light. Soon after, the stone bridges started distorting and roars reverberated in the air. Su Ming's breathing froze for a moment, because as the numerous stone bridges distorted, they turned into stone dragons. They roared together, and the sky and earth trembled. As the stone dragons roared, they charged into the sky. The Tai Ci family has been in Blackwater City for a long time. It's about time for the three greatest families to be replaced. The Yu family is a good choice. They can replace Tai Ci and become the new greatest family, Elder Feng said faintly. As he spoke, the scene in the screen of light changed once again. As the countless stone dragons roared and charged forward, the roofs of all the buildings in Blackwater City shone with a dark light. In the midst of that dark light, all the roofs looked as if they were disintegrating and complicated runes appeared. The entire Blackwater City was occupied by these densely packed runes. With a loud boom, beams of light shot out from the array formation one after another, heading straight for the Hall of Great Kindness in the sky. 10,000 rays of light shot out, 10,000 stone dragons appeared, and the weather in Blackwater City changed. Requesting recommendation votes. Requesting monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 989. Su Ming watched everything happening in the screen of light. By his side, the Duke of Crimson Flame widened his eyes in shock. He pointed at the runes on all the buildings and towers in the screen of light and spoke anxiously. This is the fifth true world's great bright light rune. It's one of the powers of the fifth true world's entire defense system in the universe. His heart trembled. The structure of this great bright light rune was a great secret even in the fifth true world. Besides the race that created it, it would be difficult for anyone else to know about it. When the four great true worlds fought against the fifth true world, the fifth true world had used all the planets as its foundation to create an innumerable amount of these runes. Every single time they were activated, the true world would tremble, and the destructive power was indescribable. All those who saw it with their own eyes and managed to survive would find it difficult to forget. Fellow Taoist, you have seen a lot of things. That's right, this is the fifth true world's great bright light rune. Elder Feng cast the Duke of Crimson Flame a glance and narrowed his eyes. He spoke with a smile, but once he finished speaking, he changed the topic and said something that caused the Duke of Crimson Flame's pupils to shrink. As expected of the Duke of Crimson Flame's 7th Army and the general stationed in the 8th region of the Southwest War Zone, it's not surprising that you can recognize the Great Bright Light rune. The Duke of Crimson Flame's expression changed, but Su Ming remained as calm as ever. He only turned his head to cast Elder Feng glance. I know everything about the fourth god of Berserker's magnificent feats in the barren lands of divine essence, and how you were forced into Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, but at that time, I didn't know that you were the fourth god of Berserkers. Now that I've thought about it, I've connected your past events together. Elder Feng smiled kindly and looked towards Su Ming as well. The stone dragons that are formed by the stone bridges in Blackwater City are formed by the divine abilities of the Rockfall race, who still exist in divine essence Star Ocean. Only the stones that have been blessed by their great priests can gain intelligence over time and absorb the power of the world to grow. Judging by the ripples of power from each stone dragon, they should have existed for tens of thousands of years. If we connect this to the time when Blackwater City was built, then Lai Shan family should have been part of it when the Tai Ci family built it, Yu Rou said elegantly beside Su Ming. Thousands of years ago, progenitor Yu Rou was the only one who had managed to clear the second gate of heavenly Tao in the Yu family. She had long since heard that she was an exquisite being and obtained the power of the moon god. She became the apostle of the moon and obtained the power of the moon god. Ming, and became of the moon god. Now, it seems that this is indeed the case. Elder Feng smiled faintly. The depth in his eyes made it seem like there were very few secrets in the world that he did not know. Yuro's expression remained as calm as ever. She was not shocked by Elder Feng revealing her identity. After all, it was not that difficult for a family who dared to fight against the Tai Ci family, who had laid down their plans when Blackwater City was built, to know these secrets. It was especially so when Yuro remembered that Elder Feng had said something domineering just now. Blacking Planet is ours. Without absolute power, it was impossible for her to say those words. That was why Yuro was not surprised. Instead, she lowered her head to show her respect. Elder Feng pointed out her identity, but Yu Chenhai, who was not too far in the distance, had his expression changed drastically. It was as if a storm had raged in his heart. He stared at Yuro's back with a dumbfounded expression, and for a period of time, his mind went blank. He suddenly understood why Su Ming had not minded him being infatuated with his maidservant when they were in the tower in the Yu family before they came to Blackwater City. In fact, he even remembered the strange look on Su Ming's face at that time. Only at that moment did he completely understand that the person who had caused him to be so infatuated and even fall in love with her was actually his own progenitor. This sort of shock was something he could not bear for a period of time. As his face turned pale, he staggered a few steps backwards. A wry smile appeared on his face, and there was even a hint of awkwardness on it. Su Ming did not pay any attention to Yu Chenhai. Instead, he looked at Elder Feng and asked calmly, "The first god of berserkers found the fifth true world. I will give you an answer to this later, fourth god of berserkers. Right now, we should continue watching Lai Shan family's true strength in Blacking Planet." Elder Feng avoided the topic and shook his head with a smile. As they spoke, a storm raged in Blackwater City through the screen of light. The world roared, and the expressions of the hundreds of cultivators who were closing in on the Lai Shan family changed drastically. Clearly, they were shocked by the scene in Blackwater City. In disbelief, they retreated without any hesitation, intending to return to Great Kindness Hall. However, the stone dragons were even faster. In an instant, they closed in on them, and booming sounds shook the sky. As the loud booming sounds drowned out the shrill screams of pain, blood spilled from the sky. Most of the hundreds of cultivators from the Tai Ci family died in that instant. The remaining cultivators fled swiftly with terror in their eyes. Quite a number of the stone dragons behind them crumbled, but when they turned into stones and fell down, they would gather together on their own to turn into another stone dragon that chased after the rest of the cultivators. At that moment, the powerful light from Blackwater City's great bright light rune rose from the ground, and, as if it had turned into a screen of light, it crashed into Great Kindness Hall. As booming sounds surged into the sky and reverberated in the air, Great Kindness Hall started trembling violently. It only lasted for the span of a few breaths before it exploded right before Su Ming's eyes, turning into an endless amount of shards that tumbled backwards. Hundreds of cultivators fled from within, but they did not manage to escape too far. Once they were touched by the great bright light rune, they were crushed. At that moment, the clouds in the sky tumbled about, and a furious roar came from the sky. As it did so, gigantic shadows swiftly gathered together in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, dozens of gigantic palaces appeared. Each of the palaces was a Great Kindness Hall. When they appeared at the same time, the mighty pressure stirred up descended on the ground. That mighty pressure contained a tone that allowed no argument in the wrath of the nine heavens. Lai Shan family, you've been planning for so many years and have hidden your strength so deeply, but Blackwater City belongs to the Tai Ci family. You're just asking for death. As that furious roar reverberated in the air, the entire Blackwater City started trembling. Red light started shining at the edges of the city, and in the blink of an eye, that red light connected with each other to form a red screen of light. That screen of light was like a huge bowl that was placed on the ground. Once it covered Blackwater City, it started shrinking inwards. Wherever it went, the towers would shatter. In fact, some of the cultivators in the city did not manage to dodge in time and were touched by the red light. They immediately screamed in pain and their bodies started rotting away. Their blood was instantly sucked away and turned into a part of the blood-red screen of light. Su Ming looked at everything in the screen of light, and Elder Feng's flat voice echoed in his ears. Blackwater City was built by the Tai Ci family, but the people who designed the rune, the structure, and the people who built it were all from the Lai Shan family. However, at that time, we were not called the Lai Shan family. As Elder Feng spoke, he lifted his right hand and pointed at the screen of light. With that one point, Su Ming immediately saw the shrinking red screen around Blackwater City come to an abrupt halt. Then, like a bubble bursting, it burst from the top. The entire red screen of light shone with a crimson light, and with a bang, it gathered at the spot where it shattered and turned into a blood-red figure. That figure was a dwarf with long, blood-red hair. Once he appeared, he lifted his head and roared. As he did so, all the cultivators in Blackwater City felt as if their blood was about to leave their bodies. The blood-red screen of light gathered together rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared. All of it had been absorbed by the blood-red dwarf. Blood-red rune spirit. Damn it, why is there a rune spirit in this rune? When we built this rune in the past, we already eliminated the possibility of a rune spirit being born. A voice immediately traveled forth from the dozens of great kindness palaces in the sky. The blood-red dwarf licked his lips, then lowered his head and bowed in the direction of Lai Shan family's auction hall. Once he did so, he lifted his head and roared, and as if his body had turned into a sea of blood, he charged into the sky. At the instant the blood-red rune spirit rushed out, Su Ming even saw a blood-red moon appear on the rune spirit's body. That moon represented the rune spirit's level of cultivation. At the same time, the dozens of great kindness palaces in the sky moved and swiftly overlapped with each other to form the shape of a tower that pressed down on the incoming blood-red rune spirit. A loud bang rang in the air. The tall tower formed by the dozens of palaces pressed down on the blood-red rune spirit's body. Then, the tower shuddered, and thousands of cultivators flew out from within. Each of them had extraordinary power, and once they flew out, they filled the sky and charged towards Lai Shan family's auction hall. The Tai Ci family has been growing for tens of thousands of years, and we have plenty of family members, but how many of them have the blood of the Lai Shan family flowing in their veins? Elder Feng suddenly laughed. That smile of his was a little ghastly and enchanting. As he laughed, he brought out a black plate and threw it at the screen of light. Su Ming immediately saw the plate fusing into the screen of light, then appearing in the sky above Blackwater City. When it did so, the plate grew several times larger and turned into the shape of a small hill. There were two big words on it: black ink. Once the plate appeared, most of the thousands of people from the Tai Ci family who had rushed towards the Lai Shan family came to an abrupt halt. Their expressions changed drastically, and they only seemed to hesitate for a short moment before they immediately turned around and started fighting against the cultivators who had been their family members just a moment ago. This scene caused a brilliant light to shine in Su Ming's eyes. He could still accept everything that had happened just now. It did not matter whether it was the rune in Blackwater City, the screen of light, or other things, he could understand it. But now, the members of the Tai Ci family had split up because of a single plate. This represented an incredibly great matter. As if he had noticed Su Ming's shock, Elder Feng turned his head around to look at him and smile kindly. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There is no way that the first god of berserkers who was able to create the berserkers dynasty in 10,000 years would only have a middle-grade Lai Shan family in Black Ink Planet. In Black Ink Planet, we are the true masters in the dark. As Elder Feng spoke, the tower in the sky above Blackwater City trembled and crumbled with a bang. Dozens of halls crumbled, and as they crumbled, the blood-red rune spirit let out a roar. Yet at that moment, a sigh echoed languidly in the sky. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 990. Black Ink Dao, the kings that stand above all other families in Black Ink Planet. You have disappeared for tens of thousands of years. I didn't expect that you were the ones supporting the Lishan family. As the sigh echoed in the air, 18 phantoms appeared in the sky. They were 18 pitch-black mountain peaks that towered between the heavens and the earth. They brought with them a pressure that caused the earth to tremble as they slowly descended. There were 18 old men sitting cross-legged on the 18 mountains. All of them had dark expressions on their faces, and the words just now had come from one of them. These 18 mountains were known as Tai Ci Mountains, and these 18 people were the 18 progenitors of the Tai Ci family on the surface. All of them were in the later stage of Whirlplane Realm. When the 18 mountain peaks appeared, the sky behind them distorted as hundreds of people from the Temple of Great Kindness descended from the sky. At that moment, the entire sky was occupied by the Tai Ci family. Waves of mighty pressure and presence filled the world, showing off the might of the strongest families in Black Ink Planet. 20,000 years ago, one of the progenitors of the Tai Ci family noticed the existence of Black Ink Dao in the dark in Black Ink Planet. Based on the destruction of the families in Black Ink Planet over the past tens of thousands of years, he deduced Black Ink Dao's strength. He did not hesitate to give up on the main family in Blackwater City and opened up a dimensional crack with all his family members so that the Tai Ci family could use that dimensional crack as our base. Many of our family members have been isolated from the world and have never left the dimensional crack. I'd like to see how Black Ink Dao will assimilate the members of the Tai Ci family. An old voice tumbled out from the mouths of the 18 progenitors of the Tai Ci family, and it shook the entire area. All members of the Tai Ci family, hear my orders. Destroy Blackwater City. Kill all the cultivators in the city. Destroy Lishan family's base in this place. Also, allow all members of the family to use the relocation rune regardless of the cost to head to Lishan family's base and uproot them. Notify all the families in Black Ink Planet that Black Ink Dao has reappeared. There are members of Black Ink Dao in each of these families. Have them come to help us and use this chance to chase Black Ink Dao off Black Ink Planet. It is especially so for the Mo family and the Hua family. Tell them that if the Tai Ci family is destroyed, then there will come a day when their families will be destroyed by Black Ink Dao's hands as well. Look at the history of Black Ink Planet. Look at the 4 great families before the 3 of us. Look at how they were already destroyed. They are our examples. Once the 18 progenitors gave their orders, an innumerable amount of cultivators immediately flew out from the hundreds of palaces behind them with a bang. At first glance, there were tens of thousands of them. These are the power of the Tai Ci family, and they had mobilized almost all the members of the Tai Ci family. There was still a group of clan members who had yet to appear. Instead, they had already stepped into the relocation rune in the dimensional crack and were heading towards the place where Lishan family was located. Yet at the instant the members of the Tai Ci family appeared and charged towards Lishan Auction Hall, the same scene from before appeared once again. Nearly half of the tens of thousands of Tai Ci family members turned around swiftly, and with aloofness and mercilessness, they attacked their own family members without any hesitation. For a moment, the sky was in chaos. The expressions of the 18 progenitors changed drastically, and disbelief appeared on their faces. The old man who had given the orders just now also had shock on his face. It was difficult for him to imagine just how these family members had been lured into Black Ink Dao. With a furious roar, he moved, and the remaining 17 people followed behind him. He turned his head around and cast a glance at the 17 Tai Ci family's progenitors, who shared the same status as him. At that moment, they were the only ones he could trust. He believed that these 17 people would definitely not betray the Tai Ci family. But at the instant he turned his head around, a deafening boom suddenly rang out behind him. 14 of the 17 people attacked 3 people at the same time. As the booming sounds shot into the air, the 3 old men coughed up blood and fell back. The others did not chase after them, but instead charged towards him. Anguish, grief, complicated emotions, and confusion caused the most mighty pressure among the 18 progenitors to be covered in light, and booming sounds rang out incessantly in his ears. Not a single member of the Lyshan family left Blackwater City's auction hall. They were all staring at the screen of light with a dumbfounded expression. There were certain secrets that even they did not know. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he asked calmly, "How did you do it?" "We did these things when we were with the first god of berserkers in the land of berserkers. Or else how could the berserkers dynasty have risen from the chaos? How could the immortals and all the races in true Morning Dao world worship us?" In fact, even the culpable lord of true Morning Dao world was shocked and attacked without regard for his status. Elder Feng smiled. Su Ming fell silent once again. He suddenly felt that he had never truly known Lai Shan Xiao. The Lai Shan Xiao mentioned in the ancient scrolls and history was so mighty and supreme, but everything he saw at that moment overturned that belief. If the Tai Ci family could become one of the strongest families in the world, then they wouldn't just have these powerful warriors, Su Ming said in a low voice while looking at the screen of light. That's right. These are just the power of the Tai Ci family on the surface, Elder Feng said with a smile. When he said those words, a loud bang that shook the sky and earth reverberated in the chaotic sky above Blackwater City. It spread in all directions and replaced all other sounds, causing the sky to tremble. A gigantic crack that was several tens of thousands of leagues long appeared in the sky. That crack was the one in the dimension where the Tai Ci family was located. Once it appeared, figures shot out from it, and they formed 4 squads. Their appearance immediately caused excitement to appear on the faces of the 4 old men who were being surrounded. The other members of the Tai Ci family in the area also became excited. Red, blue, white, and black. There were 4 different colored armors, and there were 3,000 people in each of them. These 4 squads were the hidden forces of the Tai Ci family. Red represented the murderous presence. Blue represented an overflowing life force. White represented an endless amount of ancient air. And as for black, it was pure destruction. There were more than 10,000 people in the 4 squads. At the instant they appeared, before they could even start killing, chaos immediately broke out. Even they began to split up. This scene caused despair to appear on the faces of all the members of the Tai Ci family who were fighting back. Black Ink Dao, just how deep have you been hiding your strength? You are the hidden kings of Black Ink Planet. Why did you wipe off the Tai Ci family? The progenitor, who was surrounded and attacked by familiar members of his family, cried out shrilly. Because you offended someone you shouldn't have. Elder Feng's voice echoed in Blackwater City. Who? Who did we offend? Tell me, who did we offend? And all of you, you're also members of the Tai Ci family. You have the blood of the Tai Ci family coursing through your veins. Why did you betray us? The old man had already descended into madness. Under the intense questioning, most of the members of the Tai Ci family who had rebelled laughed coldly and attacked even more ruthlessly. One of the rebelling progenitors who had surrounded and attacked the old man licked the blood at the corners of his mouth. As he laughed coldly, there was a hint of derision on his face. The blood of the Tai Ci family coursing through our veins? We've long since ceased to be Black Ink Dao's progenitors' blood coursing through our veins. We are berserkers. The old man laughed brokenly and retreated repeatedly. He saw the 4 hidden squads of the Tai Ci family fighting fiercely against each other at that moment. He saw all the members of the Tai Ci family either dead or injured. Not a single member of the Lyshan family had appeared. All of this seemed like a joke that the Tai Ci family had split apart. This made him remember that quite a number of families in Black Ink Planet had perished due to internal conflicts. By the looks of it now, all of this was incredibly ludicrous. Progenitor, I have done my best. The old man closed his eyes. Yet the instant he did so, 3 presences suddenly descended with a bang from the crack in the sky. At the instant they appeared, 3 suns appeared in the sky. The mighty pressure spreading out from them was the might of those in solar Culpa realm. In an instant, all the people fighting in the battlefield were forced to stop their attacks and look towards the sky in shock. Within the three suns were three ancient figures. They were the ancestors of the Tai Ci family who had been in isolation all year round. They were powerful warriors in solar Culpa realm. The three old coots have finally appeared, but the strongest one, the one who noticed the existence of Lai Shan family in the dark, has yet to appear. Elder Foam smiled faintly, then lifted his right hand and formed a seal before pointing at the screen of light. Nieli, based on the promise we made in the past, it's time for you to attack. At the instant Elder Fang's words traveled through the air, Su Ming immediately felt the ground trembling. The entire Blackwater City was trembling. From the screen of light, he could clearly see that the gigantic lake in which Blackwater City was located had started tumbling and boiling at that moment. Roars that did not belong to cultivators shot through the lake and charged into the nine heavens. With just a glance, Su Ming saw a gigantic dragon head rushing out of the lake with a bang and charging towards the sky. That dragon head was 10,000 feet big and looked incredibly ferocious. When it rushed out, it brought with it a heinous amount of lake water, as if it had reversed the universe and turned the clear sky into a curtain of rain. Once the dragon head appeared, it lifted its head and roared. Its roar shook the world, and countless signs of shattering appeared. Soon after, another dragon head rushed out of the lake. Then, the third dragon head also roared. The three dragon heads were 10,000 feet big and 100,000 feet long. They swept through the sky and charged towards the three ancestors in solar Culpa realm from the Tai Ci family. Nine-headed dragon. Su Ming's pupils shrank. He sucked in a deep breath. With just one glance, he recognized the ferocious beast hidden in the lake. It was a living nine-headed dragon. You know this beast? You should have inherited the bell left in the land of berserkers in the past, right? Elder Foam pondered over it for a moment before he smiled. At the same time, as the three dragon heads roared, a muffled voice spread through the sky. Nine-headed dragon, seeking recommendation tickets, to be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 991. In the previous chapter, Jiuying had been changed to Jiuli. As he looked at the three roaring dragon heads in the pool where Blackwater City was, Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. He gained a very shocking understanding towards Lai Shan family strength. It doesn't matter whether it's the rune, the stone dragon, the great bright light rune, or even the agreement between you and a nine-headed dragon. But how did you manage to split the Tai Ci family? How did you make them betray you at such a critical moment? Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he looked at Elder Foam. Black Ink Dao did not exist in Black Ink Planet in the past. Ever since we came here, Black Ink Dao came into existence. We have trusted followers in each of the families. We are the kings in the dark, and we can decide whether a family will prosper or fall. We can stir up internal strife in Black Ink Planet, and we can also bring forth a disaster that will shock the four great true worlds, such as the change in Black Ink Planet in the past. Elder Foam smiled, but his words caused Su Ming's heart to tremble once again. If he calculated the time, the change in Black Ink Planet had also happened when Lai Shan Xiu came to the barren lands of divine essence. As for why we could make the members of these families become berserkers and make them choose to betray us when we needed them, perhaps you should be able to guess some of it. Elder Foam cast Su Ming a glance. He did not reveal everything, but instead had the ghost of a smile on his lips. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he said in a low voice, "That is the divine ability the second god of berserkers created himself. Before the Lord God of berserkers and I left, we saw that there were three people who had the right to take over the god of berserkers' position. I wonder whether the second god of berserkers you speak of is one of them. It doesn't matter whether he is or not. But the great art of heartless berserker seed is not created by the second god of berserkers, as you say, But the art the Lord God of Berserkers used to enslave all worlds is also the God of Berserkers' art. In this world, only Lord Lai Shan, with his unprecedented talent, was able to create this technique. Old Feng shook his head and slowly said. As the two of them spoke to each other, the weather in the sky above Blackwater City changed. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth. It was the sound of the air crumbling due to the fight between the three heads of the nine-headed dragon and the three old men in Solar Culpa Realm. This was the first living nine-headed dragon Su Ming had ever seen. Its strength was incredibly shocking. In fact, in Su Ming's eyes, if the candle dragon had run into this nine-headed dragon when it was at its peak, then since they were mortal enemies, it would have been difficult to tell just who would have won. In fact, Su Ming could even feel that the nine-headed dragon was slightly stronger than the candle dragon. It has 9 heads. Right now, the 3 heads that have appeared can already fight against 3 Solar Culpa realms. If all 9 heads appear at the same time, then even if it hasn't reached the realm of Masters of Fate, Lives, and Death, it will still be enough for it to become the strongest person under the Masters of Fate. Booming sounds came from a screen of light and echoed in Lai Shan family's auction hall. Su Ming looked at the screen of light and spoke calmly after some time. It's no wonder why you didn't care about the Tai Ci family using the relocation method to destroy Lai Shan family. If Blackwater City alone is already so powerful, then Lai Shan family must have hidden even more power. Elder Feng lifted his right hand and swung it forward. Immediately, the area beyond the screen of light distorted, and nearly 100 screens of light of various sizes appeared. Each of them had a different picture, and they showed the locations of all the families in Black Ink Planet. If you're curious, then just watch, Elder Feng said with a smile. Su Ming swept his gaze past the near 100 screens of light and fell silent. He saw long arcs within these screens of light. They were the members of the Tai Ci family, and they were heading towards the families in Black Ink Planet to ask for help. Chun family, a middle-tier family in Black Ink Planet. A long arc charged down from the sky and descended in an instant to reveal a middle-aged man. He was dressed in a luxurious robe and had an anxious expression on his face. Once he descended, he immediately wrapped his fist in his palm towards Chun family. I, Tai Ci and of the Tai Ci family, bring a letter from our progenitor and request an audience with Chun family's progenitor. This matter concerns the drastic change that has happened to all the families in Black Ink Planet, and we hope that progenitor of Chun family will meet us. Capture this person. Almost at the moment the middle-aged man finished speaking, an ancient voice came from Chun family. Once that voice spoke, dozens of people charged out from within Chun family. The middle-aged man's expression changed. He was just about to retreat, but there were quite a number of powerful warriors among the dozens of people whose levels of cultivation were higher than his. When they attacked, they did not give the middle-aged man any chance to fight back. It was as if they wanted to immediately kill him, as if there was someone watching them, and the Chun family was eager to show their sincerity. In just 10 breaths, a shrill scream of pain reverberated in the air, and the middle-aged man from the Tai Ci family who had come to ask for help was destroyed. It was also at this moment that an incredibly built man with a flowery mask walked out from Chun family. Chun family's progenitor personally followed behind him, and there were also a large number of powerful warriors from the Chun family following behind him. Sir, don't worry. The Chun family has long since found the Tai Ci family an eyesore. Even if you didn't come, we would have still killed that person from the Tai Ci family today. Chun family's progenitor wrapped his fist in his palm respectfully. The man nodded and took a step forward before turning into a long arc and leaving. Only when he left did Chun family's progenitor wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead. Su Ming saw this scene on the screen of light. In fact, he saw a similar scene on all the screens of light. All the members of the Tai Ci family who were sent out were killed by their own families in a hurry. However, there were also those who did not die. They were the Mo family from Ink Kirin City and the Hua family from Worldly Star City. These two families were also at the peak of the world, and they did not kill the people from the Tai Ci family who came to ask for help. However, they refused to meet them. As for the cultivators from the Tai Ci family who were heading to the place where Lai Shan family was located, Su Ming saw them charging forward in the sky with thousands of people. Suddenly, a gigantic tentacle stretched out from the clouds in the space before them. There was a large amount of polyps on that tentacle, and as it swept through the area, the world looked as if it was rotating. As the sea of clouds tumbled about, a gigantic creature that was 100,000 feet in size was revealed. It was a gigantic octopus. With the clouds as its sea, it swam about in the sky. And at that moment, it had appeared out of nowhere and started a brutal slaughter on the thousands of cultivators from the Tai Ci family. In fact, if Su Ming took a closer look, he could vaguely see an old man sitting cross-legged on the head of the gigantic octopus. That old man's face was indistinct, and Su Ming could not see it clearly, but there was a layer of water vapor that seemed to be surrounding the old man. When the sun shone, it reflected a seven-colored light. That's the old rain berserker. Elder Feng smiled. Wind, rain, thunder, and fog. They were the four great generals under the first god of berserkers' command. Su Ming fell silent. When he averted his gaze from the screens of light, he had a general idea of Lai Shan family's strength in Black Ink Planet. With this sort of strength, it was just as Elder Feng had said. They were the hidden kings of Black Ink Planet. Even if their methods were slightly despicable and they did not act in a righteous manner, just like how Lai Shan family had chosen to be the hidden kings of Black Ink Planet, those who were in the dark would naturally not choose to act in a righteous manner. Su Ming agreed to this because he knew that the brighter a fire was in the dark, the more attention it would attract. Usually, the first thing to be extinguished would be the fire that everyone could see. True immortality was to hide in the darkness, or even to become one with it. That way, one would never be destroyed, and would instead become an existence that could destroy others. This was the path Lai Shan Xiu chose when he came to Black Ink Planet, and it was precisely because of this that Black Ink Dao managed to become a force of power in Black Ink Planet that could overturn the world after tens of thousands of years. This was the strength of the barbarian tribe. Lord God of Berserkers once said that he is a berserker, and we are all berserkers. Then everything we do, even if it's incredibly despicable, even if we act like vile people, is all for the berserkers to exist in the universe. It is not easy for a race to rise to power. It is just like how the Lord God of Berserkers thought that the Berserkers had already risen to power in the past. In fact, he was prepared to change the skies of true Morning Dao world and turn it into the Berserkers' true world, but the ancient will from Death region could still easily destroy everything the Lord had with a flip of his hand, forcing him to obey and leave the land of Berserkers to search for Death region's door. Did you think that before we left in the past, we did not think about leaving behind some hope for the Berserkers and some treasures? In fact, did we just watch as the Berserkers gradually fell into decline? Did you think that we left to search for a chance to reach a breakthrough? Did you really think that we did it for ourselves? Did you think that the stone monument of inheritance Lord Lai Shan Xiu left behind and the words 3 generations will end were really that carefree and that he no longer cared about the rise and fall of the Berserkers? Elder Feng asked softly, but the impact of his words affected Su Ming. I don't know why you left Death region, but I can guess that you were definitely forced to leave. Because in the past, the Lord God of Berserkers, Lai Shan Xiu, was threatened by Death region and forced to leave and search for the door to the 5th true world for Death region's will. If he did not obey, then the Berserkers would all be destroyed. He could only obey in humiliation and bury his hatred and madness in his heart. He chose to leave, and to make Death regions will be at ease, he had to steal his heart and draw a clear line between himself and the Berserkers. When Elder Feng said these words, his expression twisted, and madness and hatred appeared in his eyes. Over the tens of thousands of years, we have been constantly thinking about our home, about our people, and about all of you. All the buildings in Lai Shan family are maps of the Berserkers. You have never seen the grief we feel when we look at the maps of the Berserkers. You have never seen the pain in our hearts when we miss our home. Over the tens of thousands of years, we have worked tirelessly. We have given up on our dignity, given up on acting in a righteous manner, and thrown ourselves into darkness, all so that one day we could slaughter our way back to Death region and kill all the wills in Death region, so that we berserkers could walk out of Death region completely and could become the strongest race in the universe. Elder Feng's words were like a storm, and as they rumbled, they landed in Su Ming's heart. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 992. We've been waiting all this while. We've been waiting for other berserkers to walk out and come here. We have been waiting for you. Sir Lai Shan Xiao is known as Death's child by the will of Death region. He believed that there will definitely be a second, a third, and even more Death's children after him. He has been waiting all this while, and so have we. We've been waiting for the people from our homeland to come to the barren lands of divine essence. That's why we took control of Black Ink Planet and even caused a change in it. This is a signal for you. We've been waiting for you to come. We want to create a world for the berserkers beyond Death region. This place is ours, but we're already old. This place is the world the first god of berserkers, Lai Shan Xiao, created for you. Everything here is prepared for you. Elder Feng stared at Su Ming intently. His expression was filled with sincerity, and there was not a hint of him putting on an act. At the same time he spoke, booming sounds rang out once again from Blackwater City behind the screen of light. Those sounds were as loud as thunder, and they roared endlessly. Those were the sounds produced by the 9-headed dragons, 3 heads fighting against the 3 progenitors in Solar Culpa realm from the Tai Ci family. A cold harumph also came from the sky, and it caused the air to tremble. As that cold harumph traveled forth, the entire sky instantly turned dark green. Within that dark green hue, a gigantic mountain slowly descended from the sky. That mountain was several hundreds of thousands of feet big, and it looked as if there was no end to it. As it descended, Blackwater City trembled with a bang, causing all the cultivators who were fighting to immediately retreat. It also caused the 9-headed dragon's 3 heads and the 3 progenitors in Solar Culpa realm to shudder, and they swiftly retreated. It was as if the appearance of the gigantic mountain contained a supreme, awe-inspiring might that caused all wills to come to a stop under its mighty pressure. All the battles against each other had to turn into worship as the mountain descended. Greetings, progenitor Tyson. Greetings, progenitor. Excited roars tumbled out from the mouths of all the members of the Tai Ci family who had not betrayed them. Their voices were filled with endless hope, along with an unswerving determination. It was as if as long as the progenitor appeared, all the disasters would be solved and everything would vanish into thin air. As the mountain descended, Su Ming saw a gigantic face on the body of the mountain through the screen of light. That face protruded from the mountain, and Su Ming could vaguely see that it belonged to an old man. He had an awe-inspiring presence, and it was as if he could make the universe rumble with just one anger. Elder Feng looked at the screen of light and asked calmly, "Do you know the one condition that must be fulfilled if you want to become a top family in Black Ink Planet? A master of fate, lives, and death. This family must have a master of fate, lives, and death. Only then can it become a top family. Only then can it intimidate the forces of power stationed in the 4 great galaxies. Only then can it have the right to stand on equal footing with the powerful alien races in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Only then can it carry out the trade between Divine Essence Star Ocean and the 4 great true worlds in Black Ink Planet." Elder Feng's voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. Su Ming looked at the gigantic face on the gigantic mountain rock through the screen of light. A familiar, mighty pressure made him suck in a deep breath. That sense of familiarity was not because he had seen the progenitor of the Tai Ci family before, but because he had once been hunted down by someone of the same level of cultivation as him. Enough. As the mountain rock descended, an old voice reverberated through the entire world with a bang. There was a tone that allowed no room for doubt in that voice, as if it belonged to the god of the world. Kings hidden in Blacking Planet, the Tai Ci family, and all of you do not invade each other. We will let this matter rest. Leave Blackwater City. As for the traitors, you can take them with you. This is my bottom line. Do not force me to fight to the death. I can sense that you do not have any powerful masters of fate, lives, and death in Blacking Planet. The ancient voice reverberated in all directions, and an endless amount of ripples appeared in the air. They spread out in all directions and stirred up dark green clouds, causing the sky to look as if it had turned into a vast ocean with raging waves. Sometimes, we will also give some powerful warriors the respect they deserve, such as telling them how they failed. As Elder Feng spoke with a smile towards Su Ming, he took a step forward and stepped into the screen of light before disappearing without a trace. He did not ask Su Ming to go with him. After all, not everyone had the courage to face a powerful master of fate, lives, and death. Su Ming watched Elder Feng disappear and smiled faintly, then took a step forward and disappeared into the screen of light. Elder Feng walked out of the air in the sky above Blackwater City. When he stood in the air, the gigantic face on the gigantic mountain immediately looked towards him. It was just one gaze, but contained a power that could shake the sky and earth. It was as if a gigantic, mighty pressure had swiftly descended on Elder Feng. It was also at this moment that Su Ming appeared beside Elder Feng. His appearance instantly stirred up progenitor Tai Ci's mighty pressure to descend upon him. This was not the first time Su Ming faced this sort of pressure. He stood there with his eyes sparkling, but he did not take a single step back. "You're afraid." Elder Feng's expression remained as calm as ever under progenitor Tai Ci's mighty pressure. He spoke faintly, but his words were not directed at Su Ming, but at progenitor Tai Ci. "You're afraid of the legendary king of darkness in Blacking Planet and the true power of Black Ink Dao. You're afraid of why Black Ink Dao would dare to provoke your Tai Ci family, even though you can't sense anyone in the same realm as you. You also became even more wary at the moment I appeared, because you don't know why I dare to appear before you even though my level of cultivation is not as great as yours. You're also uncertain as to why I would dare to say these words to you." Elder Feng's voice echoed in the air, and the pupils of the gigantic face on the mountain shrank slightly. "Su Ming." Elder Feng turned his head around to look at Su Ming. Su Ming looked over. "The realm of masters of fate, lives, and death is the pinnacle in the eyes of the people. It is a might of heaven that cannot be fought against, and it is the limit of the Tao of cultivation. However, there are few powers in the world that can kill those who have reached this realm. In fact, there are some terrifying poisons that are nothing to masters of fate, lives, and death. In fact, it can be said that the poisons that can kill masters of fate, lives, and death might have existed since ancient times, but they can no longer be found now. Unless you've been scheming against this person for tens of thousands of years, and you've found poison in the spirit stones he uses to train, the spiritual aura he breathes, the air he comes into contact with every day, even the different clothes he wears, and even all the things he comes into contact with during his tens of thousands of years of life. Then, after coming into contact with him for tens of thousands of years, this poison has already become a part of his body. Only by doing so would you be able to kill a master of fate, lives, and death in just tens of thousands of years." Elder Feng laughed. "Should I have used this poison on him before he became a master of fate, lives, and death? In fact, when he was born, as his level of cultivation increased and as time passed, the poison would become even more perfect?" Su Ming asked calmly. Praise immediately appeared in Elder Feng's eyes. He looked at Su Ming and nodded. "That's right. Tai Ci family was secretly controlled by Lai Shan family in the past to become the strongest family in the world. Your progenitor, Tai Ci Sha, has been missing for far too long. His life plate shattered tens of thousands of years ago. You might have hidden this matter well, but his death was part of Lai Shan family's plan, so there's no way we wouldn't know about it. Tai Si Shan, you have great potential, but from the moment you were born, everything you came into contact with was arranged by Lai Shan family. There is not a single thing you came into contact with that did not contain poison. We know the ins and outs of Tai Si family. We know that you have the legacy of the Tao of shamans in your Tai Si family. There is an awakening in your blood, and there will always be a master of fate, lives, and death in your family. Tai Si Sha's death means that another master of fate, lives, and death will appear in Tai Si family. All the people in your generation who had the chance to obtain the legacy died one after another, and you are the only one left. When you obtained the legacy and became a master of fate, lives, and death, everything you came into contact with was poison. We were the ones who let you discover the dimensional crack in the past. The color of the world in your hands was dark green. Did you never suspect that that color brought with it an oppressive aura and also death? You discovered it. That's why 10,000 years ago, you began trying to fuse with Origin Mountain of Great Kindness. You wanted to use the mountain rock as your body to get rid of the poison that had fused into your soul, but Lord Lai Shan Xiao intentionally let you discover this mountain rock in Divine Essence Star Ocean. When Elder Feng said this, his expression turned ghastly, and he stared at the gigantic mountain rock coldly. Su Ming's heart trembled furiously as he stood by the side. He suddenly became incredibly curious towards Lai Shan Xiao. This was a person who could scheme against a master of fate, lives, and death, a person who could control Black Ink Planet, a person who could even affect the rise and fall of a family at the peak of power. This person's name was Lai Shan Xiao. What is the name of this poison? After a long while, the gigantic face in the mountain rock spoke languidly. He did not refute Elder Feng's words. In fact, there was not even a hint of change in his expression. Berserker Seed Number 4. This is the name Lord Lai Shan Xiao gave this poison, and it is also the new name he gave to you. Lai Shan Xiao. The face on the gigantic mountain rock slowly closed his eyes, hiding the anguish and stiffness in them. He had only appeared at this moment instead of stopping the destruction of his family a long time ago, because he knew that he was no longer himself. He also knew that even if he chose death, the other scion of the Tai Si family would also have to repeat his fate in the future. Have my family members leave. After a long while, progenitor Tai Si opened his eyes. The anguish in them had already disappeared, replaced by a stiff and lifeless look. Very well. In the future, a middle-sized family will appear in Black Ink Planet. Its name will be Tai Si. Elder Feng smiled and nodded. All members of the Tai Si family who belong to Black Ink Dao will fuse with the Yu family. From now on, Blackwater City will belong to the Yu family. This is the reward for what you did for our god of berserkers. Once Elder Feng finished saying these words, he turned his head around to look at Su Ming. Didn't you want to meet Lai Shan Xiao just now? Let's go. I'll bring you to him. I'll also bring you to see our berserkers. If you like this work, then please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 993. Our berserkers. Su Ming cast Elder Feng glance. He did not speak. He acknowledged those words, but there was an indescribably complicated feeling in his heart. That complicated feeling came from the new name of Tai Si family's progenitor. Berserker Seed Number 4. If there was a number 4, then perhaps there was no number 5 or number 6, but there was definitely a number 3, number 2, and number 1. Who were they? With Lai Shan Xiao's intellect and methods, if he wanted to scheme against me, then perhaps I would be one of those number 1. Su Ming's expression was calm, and not a single hint of his thoughts could be seen. All of this was just his guess. Perhaps it was true, and perhaps it was false. It was just like how a person could not have the heart to harm others, but they had to be wary of others because this was the world of cultivation. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. This was a cruel era where one wrong step would cause them to be doomed for eternity. Elder Feng walked in the world, and Su Ming was by his side. The two of them walked in the air and moved forward slowly. Uro, the Duke of Crimson Flame, and the black and yellow dogs follow behind them as they charge forward. More than half of the members of each family in this land and Black Ink Planet have a berserker seed planted in them. In a subtle manner, they no longer think of themselves as cultivators, but have accepted the title of berserker. Elder Feng said slowly, and his voice echoed in the wind. We control 8/10 of the trades between Black Ink Planet and the outside world every year. We can decide how much of a certain item is traded. If we control this place, then we control a lifeline between Divine Essence Star Ocean and the four great true worlds. The competition for resources has never decreased. Every once in a while, a force of power from the outside world will come to snatch Black Ink Planet's resources. Take this Tai Ci family, for example. They were a branch of people who came from the Shaman Dao from the other worlds in the past, but we secretly split them up and crippled them here. Up to this day, even if their people did not provoke you, we would have wiped them off the face of the earth before long. Elder Feng's voice echoed in the world. He brought Su Ming past mountains, past rivers, and past plains. Don't you think that you don't feel too unfamiliar after you came to Black Ink Planet? As Elder Feng moved forward, he turned his head around and looked at Su Ming with a smile. The mountains and rivers here, the plains here, the terrain here. If you look closely, you will see that everything has been modified. It has been modified into the Berserker's world in our memories. Once Elder Feng finished speaking, he no longer spoke, but instead looked at Su Ming quietly. Su Ming fell silent. He had been observing this since the beginning, and he could already see some clues as to what was going on. It was just as Elder Feng had said, there were certain parts of the landscape that gave him a sense of déjà vu. In the distance is Ink Kirin City. The rules of the Ink family there are strict, and they're also the family we have the weakest control over. They're the core race of the alien races from Divine Essence Star Ocean. They have their own pride. As he walked, Su Ming saw far too many families. At that moment, Elder Feng's voice reached his ears. Su Ming looked in the direction of his gaze, and he saw a gigantic city of strange beasts in the distance. It was a gigantic black Kirin, and it stood on the ground with its head lifted towards the sky. There was a nostalgic look on its face, as if it was looking at the sky and the planet in its home. That black Kirin was 1,000,000 leagues big, and at first glance, it looked as if there was no end to it. A great, mighty pressure spread out from it, and the strength of it was similar to that of a master of fate, lives, and death. Elder Feng did not bring Su Ming to Black Ink Kirin City. Instead, once he circled around it, he brought Su Ming to practically the entire Black Ink Planet. Worldly Star City was among them. In the end, when the sky gradually darkened, he brought Su Ming to a mountain range in Black Ink Planet. It was a mountain range that looked like the spine of a dragon, and it looked as if a sleeping dragon was lying dormant. The mountain was pitch black. If anyone looked down from the sky, they would be able to vaguely see a person standing on one of the tallest mountains in the mountain range. That person was incredibly tall and built, and when he stood there, he gave off a presence that was even more towering than the mountain under his feet. It was as if he was the center of everything in the area. Even the world in that area seemed to be different from the other areas. It gave off a slightly sunken feeling, as if it was worshiping this person. Su Ming could only vaguely see that person's back, but as he and Elder Feng got closer, that back slowly became clearer. When it became completely clear, a complicated look appeared on Su Ming's face, because this was not a living person, but a stone statue. Lai Shan Xiu's stone statue. Elder Feng descended and stood beside the stone statue. Su Ming stood there quietly. His gaze fell on the stone statue, and he did not say a single word. After a long while, Elder Feng sighed softly and said calmly to Su Ming, "You're too late. This isn't a stone statue. 8,000 years ago, Lord Lyshan stood here and watched the sun rise and set. He seemed to be thinking about something. 3 years later, his body turned into a stone statue. His soul disappeared without a trace, and his life force disappeared without a trace. But before his soul disappeared, Elder Yu and I heard the Lord God of Berserker's divine thought. He told us that he went to a place that could decide the fate of the Berserkers. He might never return, and if he did not return in 10,000 years, then everything he created would belong to the God of Berserkers who would come in the future. If that God of Berserkers wants to search for him, then it will be a battle between the gods of Berserkers. I don't quite understand what the Lord God of Berserkers is referring to, but I believe that you should understand. Elder Feng remained silent for a moment, then cast Su Ming a profound look before he took a few steps back and sat down several thousands of feet away. He closed his eyes and no longer spoke. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. No one could tell what he was thinking. When Elder Feng moved back, he lifted his head and looked at the statue before him. He walked over, and on the statue, he saw Lai Shanxio's face. It was a face filled with an ancient air and filled with an awe-inspiring righteousness. Even if he had turned into a stone statue, the profound look in his eyes could still be seen clearly. When Su Ming looked at the statue, he sensed a sorrowful feeling. Lai Shanxio looked at the sky, as if he was thinking about something. He looked at Lai Shanxio. This was the image Su Ming had of Lai Shanxio in his heart, not the despicable berserker seed he had seen previously. After a long while, Su Ming mumbled in a voice that only he could hear, "You're giving me the right to choose." The words Lai Shanxio left behind were not complicated. They were very straightforward. Elder Feng was lying when he said that he did not understand. He just did not want to understand. The answer was not something he could decide, but a path that only those who had the right to decide could choose. Only the God of Berserkers had the right to walk down this path. It did not matter whether it was the first, the second, the third, or the fourth. As long as they obtained the acknowledgement of the land of Berserkers and the hearts of the Berserkers, then they would have the right to walk down this path. Time trickled by. Su Ming continued looking at Lai Shanxio's statue. When the night passed and the sky brightened up once again, Su Ming stood beside the statue and lifted his head to look at the sky. His actions were exactly the same as Lai Shanxio's statue. He might not be as tall and built as Lai Shanxio, but when he stood there, he still gave off a feeling that the world was beneath his feet. He just looked at the sky, silently looking at it. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, gradually, more people arrived quietly from the mountain range. The first to arrive was the old man Su Ming had seen sitting on the gigantic octopus on the screen of light. He was the rain general, one of the 4 generals of wind, jade, thunder, and fog. His old appearance was incredibly similar to Feng Lai. He arrived calmly and sat down quietly beside Elder Feng. The two of them did not speak, but simply sat there as if they were waiting for Su Ming to make his choice. As time passed, many people appeared behind them. All of them were old men, and they were all highly respected members of the Lyshan family. They rarely ventured out, but now all of them had come to this place. They looked at Su Ming's back with complicated expressions, then chose to sit down cross-legged and wait for him to continue. Half a month later, there were nearly 100 people waiting. Their gazes were gathered on Su Ming, but he could no longer notice them. He looked at the sky and wondered what Lai Shanxio had been looking at all those years ago. He continued looking at the sky for half a month and saw the sun rise and set a dozen-something times, but he did not have an answer. When another half a month went by, Su Ming looked at the sky, and in a daze, he suddenly came to an understanding. There was nothing in the sky. Lai Shanxio had not been looking at the sky in the past, but had been looking at himself, at his heart. He was hesitating, thinking about something. The competition between the gods of Berserkers. Su Ming said softly, "But I don't want to fight for it." Su Ming looked at the sky. "If you don't fight for it, if you don't come back after another 2,000 years, then leave everything here to me. Is this what you want to tell me? Is this your choice?" But why do I have a feeling that all of this is just an illusion? All of this isn't your true choice. Your final choice is for me to fight against you. Su Ming sighed. He slowly lowered his head from looking at the sky and turned around. His gaze fell on the berserkers several thousands of feet behind him. He was looking at them, and they were also looking at him. Both sides were silent. Tell me, who is the third berserker seed? Su Ming asked languidly. The prodigy of the heaven snatchers from the barren lands of divine essence 20,000 years ago. The one who answered Su Ming was Elder Foam. What about the second? Su Ming asked. One of the forces of power from the four great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands is a cultivator from true morning Tao world. Elder, you said hoarsely. This was the first time he spoke, and wherever his voice traveled to, it was as if there was water vapor spreading out. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he asked faintly, who is the first? Once he spoke, Elder Feng and Elder Yu cast their gazes on Su Ming at the same time. However, Su Ming was standing beside Lai Shanxiu's statue, and because of that, their gazes also landed on the statue, perhaps by coincidence. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 994. Su Ming turned his head sideways and cast a glance at Lai Shanxiu's statue, then sighed softly. He understood now. It could be said that he completely understood now. This was a choice Lai Shanxiu had no other choice for himself, or rather, for the god of berserkers who had come to the land of berserkers. Su Ming was number one, and Lai Shanxiu was also number one. This was a competition between the gods of berserkers. The victor would obtain the legacy of all the berserker seeds and reach an incredibly high level of cultivation, which would then lead the entire berserkers to rise to power. The competition this time did not seem cruel, because there was no killing or fighting in it. It was a search. If Su Ming found Lai Shanxiu, then he would win, and if he could not, then he would lose. As for the time limit, it was 10,000 years. However, 8,000 years had passed since then, so there were only 2,000 years left. The first god of berserkers, Lai Shanxiu, hesitated in the past because of the cruelty inherent in this competition between the gods of berserkers. It was something he did not want. That was why he gave 10,000 years. If the god of berserkers from his homeland came during these 10,000 years, then he could go through this competition where he had no other choice. There was a possibility of him winning. But if no god of berserkers came within 10,000 years, then he would replace the berserkers in Death region and bring about a storm that would bring about their rise to power. Then what reason could it be that made Lai Shanxiu believe that there could only be one god of berserkers in the land of berserkers? What reason could it be that made him give his descendants this path? This is illogical, but he still did it. Su Ming closed his eyes. In his mind, the hint of sadness spreading out from Lai Shanxiu's statue appeared. Perhaps there are many answers hidden within this sadness. Su Ming opened his eyes. He had his own answer. I will not fight for it, and neither will I search for it. I have my own path. Su Ming swung his arm and walked towards Elder Feng and the others. As he arrived, the near 100 berserkers stood up and looked at him with complicated expressions. They were waiting for his choice. Su Ming looked at the berserkers, at the ancient Elder Feng and Elder Yu, and the moment he said one word, he suddenly froze. He had thought of a possibility. This possibility made his words fall abruptly in his throat. His pupils shrank, and he slowly turned around to look at Lai Shanxiu's statue. Sorrow, hesitation, gazing at the sky, contemplation, and a logical choice, all of this, is it really that simple? The first god of berserkers, Lai Shanxiu, stood here for 3 years in the past. Berserker seed number 1. Su Ming's breathing quickened. He seemed to have grasped the key to this, but it was still unclear. As the near 100 berserkers waited for Su Ming to make his choice, he looked at Lai Shanxiu's statue once again. He walked slowly to the statue's side once again and focused his attention on the man's face. He saw hesitation, sadness, and contemplation. However, When these three emotions fused together, it caused Su Ming's heart to tremble, because he saw that once they fused together, there seemed to be a hint of anguish hidden deeply within Lai Shanxiu's expression. Su Ming fell silent. He stood beside Lai Shanxiu's statue once again and lifted his head to look at the sky. Time trickled by, and 7 days later, a hesitant look appeared on Su Ming's face. This was a hesitation he had intentionally created. He was recalling all the memories that made him hesitate, and once they fused together, they gathered on his face. Another 10 days went by. In the midst of the hesitation, on Su Ming's face was sadness. Once that deep sadness and hesitation fused together, it caused Su Ming's expression to look incredibly complicated. Another half a month went by. Besides hesitation and sadness, there was also a third expression on Su Ming's face, and that was contemplation. Only at that moment did he lift his head and look towards the sky. After remaining silent for a month, his voice echoed in the air. Yuro, tell me, what is the first description that appears in your mind when you look at my expression now? As Su Ming spoke, Yuro, who had been accompanying him quietly by his side, looked at his face in an elegant and quiet manner. After a moment, she spoke softly. Anguish. Struggle. Su Ming's heart trembled. Perhaps he could be mistaken, but the verification this time allowed him to know that the hint of anguish he saw on Lai Shanxiu's face was not a figment of his imagination. There was struggle within that anguish, but it was easy to understand. It could be understood that Lai Shanxiu did not want the competition to become the god of berserkers to happen, but he had to do it. That was why there was anguish and struggle within him. But there was another explanation. Perhaps there was a hidden truth hidden behind that anguish, and it was a truth that Lai Shanxiu wanted to convey in a subtle manner. Su Ming fell silent. As his pupils shrank, he maintained his expression and lifted his head to look at the sky. First god of berserkers, Lai Shanxiu, let me see what you want to tell me. Su Ming continued looking at the sky and simply allowed time to pass, allowed the wind and rain to fall on him, allowed the clouds in the sky to continue changing, disappearing and reappearing as time passed. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The near 100 berserkers behind him also noticed something strange, especially Elder Feng and Elder Yu. Once they looked at each other, their expressions turned incredibly solemn. Ever since the Duke of Crimson Flame acknowledged Su Ming as his young master, he had never left him. At that moment, he stood by the side, keeping his guard up against the people from the Lai Shan family. He would not allow anyone to threaten Su Ming. Yu Ro's personality had always been elegant. Time might have passed, but she continued sitting there quietly and watching the sun rise and set. As for the bald crane and the abyss dragon, these two dogs were originally still lying on the ground, but the bald crane grew impatient and managed to persuade the abyss dragon with some unknown method. It then ran away quietly a month ago, disappearing without a trace. In the blink of an eye, half a year went by. Su Ming continued, standing in the middle of the wind and rain. Even when the weather turned cold and snow started falling from the sky, he still did not move. He was immersed in an almost ethereal state as he stared at the sky and the clouds. When winter slowly passed and spring arrived, all manner of living came to life. More clouds slowly appeared in the sky, and Su Ming's body suddenly trembled. He had been standing there for nearly 10 months. At that moment, as his body trembled, the berserkers behind him immediately focused their gazes on him. In fact, Elder Feng even lifted his head to look at the sky, but he only saw clouds. Besides that, there was nothing else. Su Ming stared at the sky. He could clearly see that the clouds in the sky seemed to have gone through some sort of change at the instant they intersected with each other. It seemed as if they were about to reveal something, but in the end, there was nothing. Su Ming gradually calmed down and continued looking at the sky quietly. Time passed once again, and in the blink of an eye, a year passed by. Su Ming had been standing beside Lai Shanxiu's statue on the mountain for a total of 2 years. During these 2 years, the Yu family became the masters of Blackwater City, and they also became the strongest family in the world. Even though the Yu family did not have a master of fate, lives, and death, they still became one of the three strongest families in the world. Black Ink Planet had organized multiple auctions during these 2 years, and the people coming and going were incredibly lively. However, the area around Su Ming seemed to have been locked down. Not a single person appeared during these 2 years. It was as if this place had turned into a forbidden ground in Black Ink Planet. During the 3rd year, as the seasons of spring, summer, autumn, and winter passed by, Su Ming stood on the mountain for 3 whole years. On the last day of those 3 years, when the sun set, Su Ming shuddered once again. He moved, and there was anguish as well as conflict on his face. He stood there for 3 years without blinking, just like Lai Shan Xiao. 3 years had passed, and he had not seen anything. However, he had a feeling that he had seen something. When he closed his eyes, that feeling turned into tremors on Su Ming's body. At the instant he closed his eyes, all the clouds rising and falling in the sky he had seen during the past 3 years swiftly appeared in his mind like fleeting smoke. It was as if the sky was the same, but there were slight differences in the changes in the clouds. They were swiftly connected together in Su Ming's mind, and as they flashed past his mind, they formed 6 words. These 6 words had existed in the sky to begin with, but he needed 3 years to form them as the clouds and the sky changed. There was only one way to see these 6 words, and that was to look at the sky without blinking, just like Su Ming was doing right now. He would brand all the changes in the clouds in his mind, and only at the instant he closed his eyes would those 6 words appear. Divine Essence, Star Ocean, save me. Su Ming's heart trembled. He opened his eyes, and what he saw were precisely these 6 words, the cry for help hidden behind anguish and conflict. It was clear that this cry for help could not be heard by anyone else. In fact, it could not even be said. Otherwise, Lai Shan Xiao would not have pointed it out in such a vague manner. He had even spent 3 years slowly changing the clouds in the sky with his divine sense, causing them to change so that the person who had been looking at the sky for 3 years would hear his cry for help. The cry for help from 8,000 years ago caused Su Ming's heart to tremble, and he gained an unprecedented understanding towards Lai Shan Xiao's so-called competition between the gods of berserkers. Was there anyone else who came here before me and stood here for 3 years? Su Ming suddenly asked, then turned around to look at Elder Feng and the near 100 berserkers. No. Elder Feng shook his head. Su Ming remained silent. After some time, he sighed in his heart and said languidly, "Prepare a map of divine essence, Star Ocean, for me. The more complete, the better." Su Ming could not turn a blind eye to the first god of berserkers' cry for help. It was not for any other reason, but because he respected Lai Shan Xiao's glorious life. This isn't difficult. We have a very detailed map of divine essence Star Ocean to begin with, but there are plenty of changes in the galaxy, and the map changes every few hundred years. However, a month later, the Black Ink auction will be held jointly by the families in Black Ink Planet, and it will be held once every few hundred years. At that time, the alien races from Divine Essence Star Ocean will come, and they will have an even more detailed map of the changes in Divine Essence Star Ocean over the past hundreds of years, Elder Feng said in a low voice after casting Su Ming a deep glance. Black Ink auction? A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Will the people from the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds come? In the past, the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds would send people to Black Ink auction, Elder Feng said. If the forces of power from Lai Shan family could find out the details of me being listed as a wanted criminal in the past, then could they find a list of all the people with incredible potential among the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds who are incredibly outstanding in terms of cultivation? Su Ming asked languidly. It will either happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. I can't be certain of which day it will happen, but it will definitely happen one of these 2 days. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 995. Elder Feng cast Su Ming a glance, then turned his head around and cast his gaze on Elder Yu, who was by his side. Yes, but I'll need time. I'll need about a month, Elder Yu said flatly. Elder Yu said faintly. As his words spread out, water vapor filled the air, making it look hazy. All members of the Lai Shan family and all the forces of power in Black Ink Planet from now on, as the fourth god of berserkers, all of you must listen to my orders. Su Ming stood beside Lai Shan Xiu's statue and swept his gaze past the crowd. When he spoke, the acknowledgement from the land of berserkers and the worship from the berserkers spread out from his soul. This was the might of the god of berserkers, an invisible power that could make all berserkers' chi tumble. The near 100 berserkers shuddered and lowered their heads towards Su Ming. Elder Feng and Elder Yu also wrapped their fists in their palms and bowed towards Su Ming after a moment of silence. The near 100 people bowed together and turned into one voice. We greet the god of berserkers. A month passed by very quickly, and Black Ink Planet was incredibly lively during that 1 month. Cultivators continued arriving from outer space, and most of them were powerful warriors from sinful barren lands. They had come to Black Ink Planet for the Black Ink Auction that was held once every few hundred years. Black Ink Auction was incredibly famous in the entire barren lands of Divine Essence. It was a large auction in the truest sense of the word, and every single time it was held, a large amount of shocking treasures would appear. It was especially so for the alien races in Divine Essence Star Ocean. They would also send their people to the auction this time, and they would bring a large amount of strange items from Divine Essence Star Ocean in exchange for treasures and cultivation methods that would only appear in the 4 Great True Worlds. Similarly, the 4 Great True Worlds also placed great importance on Black Ink Planet's auction. Every single time, quite a large number of true guards would come, and there would even be representatives from various true worlds coming to the place to trade. Since there were far too many cultivators who came to Black Ink Planet, preventing chaos was an incredibly important task. The powerful warriors from the various families would form guards to prevent any fights from happening. In fact, the protective runes in Black Ink Planet would also be fully activated during the entire process. If any sort of disturbance appeared, the guards would immediately attack. Fortunately, auctions like this had been held many times over the years, so everything was carried out in an orderly manner. Su Ming sat in a palace built after the Yu family took over Blackwater City. As he sat there, he could see all the changes in Blackwater City. Behind him were the 13 progenitors of the Yu family, standing respectfully. There was a jade slip placed before Su Ming. Lai Shan Kong Jiu stood respectfully beside Su Ming. His respect came from the bottom of his heart as he waited for his orders. This jade slip had been sent by Lai Shan Kong Jiu. Recorded on it were the names of all the prodigies from the forces of power from the 4 Great True Worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands. In fact, the records were incredibly detailed, and the names of the people who might come to Black Ink Planet to participate in the auction were marked out. Su Ming held the jade slip with a calm expression. Not a single hint of emotion could be detected on his face, even if the first name he saw in the jade slip was Yi Wang. Yi Wang is the person with the greatest potential among the immortals in true Morning Dao world over the course of countless years. He attracted the attention of Morning Dao sect, and they said that he is the person with the highest possibility of moving into plain Culpa realm among the cultivators of his generation. He was also taken in as a direct disciple by Hong Kong Zi, one of the 3 grand sect elders of Morning Dao sect. Then, he followed Dao Kong, a direct descendant of Morning Dao sect, to the barren lands of Divine Essence. There is an 8/10 of a chance that this person will come to Black Ink Planet. Dao Kong is a direct descendant of Morning Dao sect in true Morning Dao world. His potential in cultivation is incredibly shocking, and he is one of the top 10 direct descendants of Morning Dao sect in terms of developing their forces of power. This person is cautious, and he is ambitious. Most of the cultivators he recruits are not weak, and he also intends to recruit Yi Wang. Yi Wang was able to come to the barren lands of Divine Essence because of this person. While he was in the barren lands of Divine Essence, A large number of followers could not follow him, which is why he is at his weakest in the barren lands of divine essence. However, he will definitely have powerful warriors protecting him, and if it was not because he has only been practicing cultivation for a short period of time, there's a possibility that he would be able to become one of the top 3 direct descendants of Morning Dao sect. Before Yi Wang appeared, he was known as the person with the greatest potential in Morning Dao sect. This person will definitely come to Black Ink Planet. Su Ming scanned through the names on the jade slip with his divine sense. Once he looked through all of them, he placed his focus on Yi Wang and Dao Kong. After a long while, Su Ming's gaze was completely focused on the information of the person called Dao Kong. Dao Kong. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He retrieved his divine sense and slowly narrowed his eyes. When he decided to go to Divine Essence Star Ocean to search for the first god of berserkers, Lai Shanxiu, Su Ming had already made his decision. He had to find his 3rd clone as soon as possible. A clone that could gather up his cultivation base and allow his level of cultivation to no longer remain stagnant. In fact, Su Ming was confident that once he found this clone, he would be able to break through to World Plane Realm from his awkward status as a cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm in one go. In fact, as the 3 clones work together, he might even be able to make this cultivation-based clone reach the middle stage of World Plane Realm. At that time, Su Ming's true power would give him an incredibly great advantage among those in the later stage of World Plane Realm, even if he did not use his Akan clone. After all, at that time, the physical body and chi of his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole would be at the later stage of World Plane Realm, and his cultivation base would be at the middle stage of World Plane Realm. At that time, he would possess the right to step into Divine Essence Star Ocean. If everything succeeds, then with the peace arrives when the elephant is here, even if I run into those in Lunar Culpa Realm, I will still have the power to protect myself. A freezing glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Su Ming had chosen Dao Kong because of his hatred towards Morning Dao sect. He had spared Yi Wang because of the unyielding and determined gaze he had when he was in Dark Mountain and Windstream Mountain in the past. Su Ming looked at Lai Shan Kong Jio and said in a low voice, "All the forces of power in Black Ink Planet. Pay close attention to Dao Kong. If he comes to Black Ink Planet, I want all the detailed information about him." Lai Shan Kong Jio's expression became stern. Once he obeyed respectfully, he took his leave. As Lai Shan Kong Jio left, Su Ming's orders were sent to the hearts of all the members of Black Ink Dao and the families in an obscure manner. An invisible net was spread out in Black Ink Planet, and it could only wait for Dao Kong's arrival. At that moment, in the galaxy beyond Black Ink Planet, there were gigantic ships slicing through the galaxy without a single sound and heading swiftly towards Black Ink Planet. Judging by their speed, they would arrive in Black Ink Planet's territory in about a few more days. Dressed in a sacred constellation robe, Dao Kong sat on a black chair with a cup of wine in his hand. He looked at the stars and occasionally took a sip from it. His expression was incredibly calm, but a brilliant light would occasionally flash in his eyes, and anyone could tell just how outstanding he was. His appearance was very handsome, especially when complemented by the sacred star robe. He was like a dragon among men. There were 9 old men standing quietly behind him. All of them had their eyes closed, but there were astonishing ripples of power echoing around their bodies. If that's the case, then our prodigy, Yi Wang, left on his own this time. Dao Kong smiled faintly and placed a wine cup in his hand down. It immediately fell to the ground, but when it was in midair, a hand suddenly stretched out from the air and caught it. Once that hand appeared, an incredibly alluring figure appeared. It was an incredibly beautiful woman. She knelt down beside Dao Kong, and once she caught the wine cup, she smiled charmingly at him. He left on his own 3 days ago. A cold voice came from before Dao Kong and the woman in a flat tone. As that voice appeared, an indistinct shadow could be seen indistinctly. That shadow's face could not be seen clearly, but based on its body, it could be seen that the shadow belonged to a woman. Very well. Over the past 1,000-something years, he has never been willing to become my follower. The day of his return is about to arrive. Then, even if he can't become my follower, he can't be chosen by my people. Let him meet with an accident in Black Ink Planet, Dao Kong said softly. He lifted his right hand and stroked the chin of the beautiful and seductive woman beside him. I'm only protecting your safety. I won't do this sort of thing for you, the shadow said flatly. There was a hint of disdain and contempt in her voice, and there was not a hint of respect in it. The young man seemed to be used to this sort of tone from the shadow. He smiled faintly and looked in the direction where the shadow was. Don't forget, you are a member of Phoenix Sect. You are the progenitor's chosen wife. Don't forget that this is a tradition that Phoenix Sect will only carry out after you become a plain Culpa Realm cultivator, the shadow said flatly. The area around her distorted, and she no longer bothered herself with Dao Kong. She turned around and left. Dao Kong chuckled and hooked the woman's chin with his hand. He looked at her beautiful face, and when his gaze landed on the tips of her ears, he pinched them gently. The woman was in pain, but she did not dare show even a hint of it. As Dao Kong pinched her ears even harder, tears fell from the woman's eyes. You're from Phoenix Sect as well. Have you met Phoenix Sect's sacred lady, by phone? Dao Kong asked softly. The woman bit down on her bottom lip and shook her head. That's true. When you betrayed Phoenix Sect, by phone participated in that mysterious plan. It's only natural that you didn't see her. Dao Kong smiled faintly. I haven't seen her either. There are two sacred ladies in Phoenix Sect. One of them is by phone, and the other is my wife, Su Hui. It's a pity that Su Hui has always hidden her face, but sooner or later, I will see her. The ancient legacy from Phoenix Sect will also belong to me. Dao Kong loosened his grip on the woman's ear and suddenly slapped her face, sending her flying 100-something feet away. Get lost. The woman lowered her head and slowly disappeared into the distance. The 9 old men behind Dao Kong looked as calm as ever. In fact, they did not even open their eyes, as if they were already used to Dao Kong's mood swings. Yi Wang, since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Dao Kong's expression was cold and dark, and he closed his eyes. This time, I will complete the progenitor's request for Black Ink auction and use the spot to head to True Morning Dao World to exchange for what I need. Because of that, even if Yi Wang dies, it will be fine. If you like this work, I welcome you to give me a recommendation vote or a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 996. Several days later, the longship that belonged to Dao Kong sliced through space without a single sound and gradually entered the territory of Black Ink Planet. Dao Kong walked out of his room and stood at the bow of the longship with his hands placed behind his back. His black hair spilled over his shoulders, and his sacred constellation robe shone with a light that looked like a rotating star. It caused Dao Kong to look incredibly elegant at that moment. His handsome and resolute face also exuded a masculine beauty. It had to be said that Dao Kong's appearance suited his status very well. It was as if a large amount of kismet in the world had gathered on his body, and he had enjoyed quite a large amount of it for himself. Or else why would he possess a potential that was second only to Yi Wang's, which was why he was a direct descendant of Morning Dao Sect, and why would he also have a face that would make all those who saw him praise him? As he stood there, the 9 old men followed behind him like shadows, but they still had their eyes closed. However, with the help of the starlight, Dao Kong could see a scene that he had not been able to see in his room previously. The 9 old men's eyes were closed because they were all sealed shut by thin threads. It looked as if the eyes of a doll had been sewn shut. Black Ink Planet. Dao Kong smiled faintly and looked at the indistinct planet in the distance. A hint of anticipation rose in his heart. This would be his final stop in the barren lands of divine essence. Once the auction ended and he left, he would no longer be stationed there to keep a lookout. Instead, he would return to True Morning Dao World through the exit there. By his side was the woman with pointy ears and a seductive face. She stood there quietly. Her eyes were empty, and there was not a hint of life in them. She looked like a puppet. There was a collar around her neck, and there were 19 runic symbols surrounding it. They were branded with bumps, and they would occasionally flash while exuding a freezing glare that would make people's hearts turn cold. The longships were like fish swimming in water, slicing through the layers of ripples in the galaxy as they approached Black Ink Planet. However, about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn after they entered Black Ink Planet's territory, piercing howls immediately rose up in front of them. As the whistling sounds appeared, a group of strange beasts with 2 heads and bodies that resembled lions appeared. As they roared, they came from the distance in a group, and there were hundreds of them. There was a cultivator sitting on the back of each of the mutated beasts. These cultivators were dressed uniformly, and their eyes shone brilliantly. They were clearly different from the thin and pathetic figures of the people in sinful barren lands beyond Black Ink Planet. They were in high spirits, and not a single hint of respect towards the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands could be seen on them. Instead, they faced all the newcomers with a calm attitude. "Who are you? Tell me your name. How dare you? We are the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands. You sinners, kneel down and greet us." A cold harumph immediately came from within the ship, and the arrogance in his voice was incredibly strong. When the cultivators from Black Ink Planet heard this, they smiled at each other, but their expressions turned cold. Every single time Black Ink Planet auction was held, there would be ignorant people like this. This was related to the experiences of the True Guards. After all, besides Black Ink Planet and Divine Essence Star Ocean, all the cultivators from the other planets would have to be incredibly respectful when they saw them. Besides, the 4 great true worlds had a system where the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds took turns keeping a lookout over the barren lands, so it was not surprising that such a scene would appear. The person leading the group of cultivators from Black Ink Planet was an old man. He rolled his eyes and said coldly, "Bring out your invitations. We are in charge of the first layer of checks outside Black Ink Planet. If you don't have an invitation, then you will be killed by the enemy." "It's just black ink." The cultivator who had let out the cold harumph just now was about to continue speaking, but his voice immediately fell silent. Soon after, a gentle voice spoke languidly, and an old man with a kind face walked out from the ship. "My fellow Taoists from Black Ink Planet have been ignorant. If we have offended you, I hope that you will not mind. We are from True Morning Tao World, and we have come to participate in Black Ink Planet's auction. These are our invitations." The old man smiled and brought out a jade slip from his bosom, then threw it forward. That jade slip immediately charged towards the cultivators from Black Ink Planet. Once the person in the lead caught it, he cast a few scrutinizing glances at it before returning it. Then, with the hundreds of cultivators behind him, he moved to the side and opened up a path. The kind old man wrapped his fist in his palm and returned to the ship with a smile on his face. Soon, Dao Kong's gigantic ship moved forward without a single sound through the path opened up by the cultivators from Black Ink Planet and swiftly left into the distance. "Immediately notify the progenitor of my family that the people from True Morning Tao World have come. Judging by the show of force, Dao Kong should be among them as well, but I don't know the details." The old man in the lead of the group of cultivators from Black Ink Planet narrowed his eyes. With a glint in his eyes, he sent a divine thought to a cultivator beside him. That cultivator immediately moved and turned into a long arc that disappeared without a trace. After a moment, Lai Shan Kong Jiao returned to Su Ming's room in Black Ink Planet's Blackwater City. He bowed respectfully before Su Ming. "Sir, the group from True Morning Tao World has arrived. Right now, they're outside Black Ink Planet and are undergoing multiple checks. We have already investigated and found out that Dao Kong is in one of the ships. There are 9 old men beside him. These 9 people have extraordinary power, and they should be at the peak of the middle stage of World Plane Realm. By the looks of it, they seem to be skilled in joint attacks, and they should have a rune within them. Besides these 9 people, Dao Kong also brought 3,000 cultivators with him. All of them have extraordinary power, and they should be fearless warriors. Also, based on our investigations, Dao Kong ran into two incredibly great dangers during the 1,000-something years he was in the barren lands of divine essence. These dangers should have come from other true worlds. One of them was something that those who were not in the later stage of world plane realm could not survive, and the other was something that those who were not in lunar Kulpa realm would definitely die. But both times he was safe and sound, which is why we suspect that there is a cultivator who is at least in lunar Kulpa realm hiding by his side. As for Yu Wang, whom you asked us to pay attention to, he came to Black Ink Planet alone yesterday. Right now, he is staying in Worldly Star Planet, and we know all his actions, Lai Shan Kong Jiu said in a low voice. Once he finished speaking, he hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something else, but in the midst of his hesitation, he did not continue. Su Ming closed his eyes and meditated. Once he finished listening to Lai Shan Kong Jiu's words, he slowly opened his eyes. There was a profound look in them, causing no one to be able to tell whether he was happy or angry. Continue, Su Ming said flatly. Lai Shan Kong Jiu smiled awkwardly, then lowered his head and quickly continued speaking. About that, Your Excellency's two pet beasts, the black and yellow dogs, I've also investigated them. They're currently in Worldly Star City as well. I don't know where they got their hands on an atlas, but there are quite a few strange things drawn on it. Also, that big yellow dog is adept at transformation, and it's taken the appearance of an old man. He brought out that picture book and spread the word, saying that the items in the picture book are the items to be auctioned this time. Quite a lot of them have been sold during the past half a year. Lai Shan Kong Jiu smiled wryly, then brought out a picture book from his bosom and placed it respectfully before Su Ming. Su Ming picked up the picture book and flipped through it, then slowly frowned. When he reached the end, he let out a cold harumph and placed the picture book by the side. There were no pictures of the items to be auctioned on the picture book. Some of them were Su Ming's own enchanted treasures. However, most of the introductions and descriptions were completely unrelated. In fact, there were quite a number of pictures of the enchanted treasures belonging to the enemies Su Ming had fought against in his life. It's only been half a year. What about them before? Su Ming lifted his head and cast a glance at Lai Shan Kong Jiu. This is... Ahem. I've never seen pets with such intelligence and intelligence in my life. They became guests of Worldly Star Planet's Hua family half a year ago. 1 year ago, they built an auction hall in Black Heron City. 1.5 years ago, they became close friends with the lead beast in the lake in Blackwater City, and they took away some of its scales. 2 years ago, they were hunted down by a dozen-something small families in Black Ink Planet working together. 2.5 years ago, they organized a search for a son-in-law, and that yellow dog turned into an incredibly beautiful woman. Then, they started infiltrating the small families, and with all sorts of shameless methods, they took away an innumerable amount of crystals. 3 years ago, right after they left, they found a small crystal mine. It belonged to a small family. Su Ming was stunned as he listened. As Lai Shan Kong Jiu recounted his story, he could not help but reveal the envy and admiration in his heart. In fact, once Elder Feng learned of this, he let out a long sigh and said that if they had come to Black Ink Planet earlier than us, then they would have been the true masters of Black Ink Planet. When Lai Shan Kong Jiu said this, he cast Su Ming a strange look. Su Ming fell silent. After some time, he let out a fake cough and spoke to Lai Shan Kong Jiu. Arrange for Dao Kong to enter Blackwater City. Everything will be carried out according to plan. Understood. Lai Shan Kong Jiu immediately bowed, got up, and left. Once Lai Shan Kong Jiu left, Su Ming's room immediately fell silent. His expression instantly turned dark. He picked up the picture book and looked at it carefully. When he remembered what Lai Shan Kong Jiu had said about the bald crane and the abyss dragon during the past 3 years, he could not help but smile wryly in resignation. By his side, Yu Ro's elegant expression changed for the first time ever since she started following Su Ming. She covered her mouth, as if she could not hold back her laughter. In the end, her body started trembling, and her laughter echoed in the air. Sir, they say that a pet follows its master's personality. I wonder if this saying applies to you. Yu Ro chuckled softly and cast Su Ming a glance. This was the first time she saw Su Ming smiling wryly in resignation. That big yellow dog of mine should have some women in its memories, but based on my understanding of it, most of those women are indistinct. Then what do you think the woman it turned into during the search for a son-in-law looked like? Su Ming asked faintly. Once he said these words, Yu Ro's expression immediately changed, and murderous intent instantly appeared in her beautiful eyes. Su Ming stood up, swung his arm, and walked towards the door. The auction was around the corner, and his plan was about to be carried out. Before that, he wanted to go and see the bald crane and the abyss dragon, and he also wanted to go to Worldly Star Planet to see an old friend. Yi Wang, tomorrow, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes, to be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.